Chapter 761, The Ninth Floor. At this moment, the two middle-aged men didn't dare hesitate to hurriedly align the wine jugs in their hands to their mouths. Subsequently, both of them raised their heads in unison and poured the wine within the jug into their mouths before drinking mouthful after mouthful in a fierce manner. Instantly, the face of the azure-clothed middle-aged man flushed red, whereas, the blue-clothed middle-aged man's face seemed to be covered in a layer of ice, and their pupils couldn't help but constrict, yet they still fiercely swallowed the wine within the wine jug and didn't dare hesitate in the slightest. Finally, the azure-clothed middle-aged man was the first to completely swallow the jug of blazer wine, and he emitted a shrill cry before hurriedly throwing away the empty wine jug in his hand. He held on tightly to his throat with both hands and felt as if a ball of flames was blazing within. It wasn't just that, the scorching feeling that he felt from the meridians and internal organs within his body even caused his body to be unable to refrain from trembling intensely. At the same time, he roared with a low voice before spitting out a mouthful of the blood, and the blood even contained a scorching aura that caused one to feel fearful from the sight of it. Pooh! The other blue-clothed middle-aged man's body shivered as if he'd fallen into a pit of ice, and when the wine jug in his hand was just moved away from his mouth, he instinctively spat out a mouthful of blood before directly falling unconscious. Even if it was an ordinary void interpretation stage expert, the expert wouldn't dare drink a jug of blazer wine and a jug of glaze wine like this. They were mere 7th level void initiation stage martial artists, so they were naturally unable to endure it. Scram! Duan Ling Tian glanced coldly and indifferently at the azure-clothed middle-aged man, and then he returned to his own seat. The azure-clothed middle-aged man didn't dare hesitate and disregarded his injuries as he hurriedly carried up his companion and fled from the 7th floor of the Ice Flame Pavilion. Meanwhile, the 7th floor of the Ice Flame Pavilion was deathly silent. The gazes of most people carried traces of terror as they looked at Duan Ling Tian. Tian Wu, if I'm not wrong, the wine on the 9th floor ought to be the best in the entire Ice Flame Pavilion, right? Duan Ling Tian looked at Feng Tianwu who hadn't returned to her senses, and he asked with a smile. Feng Tianwu returned to her senses when she heard Duan Ling Tian, and she replied. Yes. I want to go try it. Duan Ling Tian smiled lightly. Feng Tianwu was first stunned, and then she smiled. Then we'll go up and take a look. Subsequently, both of them left their seats and ascended the stairway that led to the 8th and 9th floor. Presently, none of the customers of the 7th floor were shocked by this. Since that violet-clothed young man was capable of drinking a jug full of blazer wine and glaze wine that were mixed together without suffering the slightest injury, his cultivation was obviously profound. It was extremely likely that the violet-clothed young man was a void interpretation stage expert. As far as they were concerned, it was impossible for even a 9th-level void initiation stage martial artist to drink blazer wine and glaze wine like that without being injured in the slightest. Yet they didn't know that the reason Duan Ling Tian dared drink like that was entirely because of the special method in the memories of the rebirth martial emperor. That method seemed to be simple, yet it was extremely difficult to achieve. Tian Wu, have you been to the 9th floor? Duan Ling Tian asked. Yes. Feng Tianwu nodded. My father brought me there during the first time I came to the Darming dynasty, but my cultivation was low at that time, and I only watched his drink wine there. Duan Ling Tian nodded. As a person that had fused with the memories of the rebirth martial emperor, he naturally knew that some special wines couldn't be drunk by just anyone. Not to mention anything else, but just the earlier blazer wine and glaze wine in the 7th floor was something that would absolutely cause the death of a martial artist below the void prying stage. After Duan Ling Tian and Feng Tianwu ascended the 8th floor and caused the inscription formation at the entrance to the stairway to emit two clear sounds, the two old men that stood on guard there were instantly petrified. They are both 8th level void initiation stage martial artists. The two old men couldn't help but gasp. Obviously, Duan Ling Tian and Feng Tianwu had shocked them. They instead weren't aware that after Duan Ling Tian and Feng Tianwu ascended to the 8th floor, they didn't stop before directly heading towards the 9th floor. Only an old man stood before the entrance to the 9th floor's stairway, and his calm expression was slightly moved when he saw Duan Ling Tian and Feng Tianwu. Little kids, go get your seniors if you want to ascend the 9th floor. The old man spoke slowly. Obviously, he didn't think that either Duan Ling Tian or Feng Tianwu was a 9th level void initiation stage martial artist, as the two of them were truly too young, whereas, the 9th level of the void initiation stage was a threshold in order to enter the 9th floor. Thank you for your warning, senior, but there's utterly no need. Duan Lingtian took the lead and passed through the stairway, and a clear sound resounded out. The old man's expression instantly froze. Tian Wu. After he passed through the inscription formation, Duan Lingtian smiled as he gestured to Feng Tian Wu. As far as he was concerned, he'd already possessed the qualifications to ascend the 9th floor, so it was fine even if Feng Tian Wu was unable to pass through the inscription formation, as he could bring her in. But Duan Lingtian's smile froze in next to no time. A clear sound entered into Duan Lingtian's ears, causing him to be unable to refrain from revealing a shocked expression. Tian Wu, you've broken through. Never had Duan Lingtian imagined that Feng Tian Wu had actually broken through to the 9th level of the Void Initiation stage. I broke through a while ago. Feng Tian Wu smiled lightly. Big brother Duan, let's go in. Where did these two little freaks come from? The old man looked behind him with a slightly dumbstruck gaze, and he stared blankly at the figures of Duan Lingtian and Feng Tian Wu that disappeared into the distance as he muttered. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian and Feng Tian Wu entered the 9th floor's hall. The 9th floor was also the highest floor in the Ice Flame Pavilion, and there were extremely few people drinking wine here, a total of less than 20 people. Most of these people were actually young men and young women. Of course, these young geniuses had gathered at 3 tables. Obviously, most of them were brought up by other 9th level Void Initiation stage martial artists. At the beginning, there weren't many people that noticed the appearance of Duan Lingtian and Feng Tian Wu, and they only noticed them after a young man in embroidered clothes unintentionally laid eyes on Feng Tian Wu and cried out in shock. What a beautiful woman! How did they come up? For a time, many people couldn't help but be slightly astonished. It was practically impossible to make them believe that this pair of young man and young woman possessed the strength to ascend the 9th floor of the Ice Flame Pavilion, because the two of them were truly too young. It ought to be their seniors that sent them up before leaving. Someone couldn't help but guess, whereas, this guess obtained the recognition of most people. Duan Lingtian naturally heard these words, yet he disregarded it. As far as he was concerned, no matter if he relied on his own strength to ascend the 9th floor or not, it was utterly unrelated to anyone else. The tables on this 9th floor are slightly larger. Duan Lingtian and Feng Tian Wu walked towards a table, and they hadn't sat down when Duan Lingtian's pupils had already constricted. Heaven, what have I seen? At the center of the tablet was actually a large number of round indents, and the center of these indents were empty. These wouldn't be all for placing origin stones, right? The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth twitched. It would at least require around 100 mid-grade origin stones to fill all the indents on this table. When Duan Lingtian sat down and saw Feng Tian Wu withdraw a pile of origin stones to place into those indents, he couldn't help but reveal a bitter smile. I truly never imagined that the wine in this 9th floor is so expensive. Tian Wu, at least 100 mid-grade origin stones are required to be placed here, right? It's exactly 99, said Feng Tian Wu. 99, Duan Lingtian's heart trembled slightly. 99 mid-grade origin stones was equivalent to almost 10,000 low-grade origin stones. This Ice Flame Pavilion's wine is simply seizing away one's money. No, it's seizing origin stones. Whoosh. Along with Feng Tian Wu placing 99 mid-grade origin stones, the inscription formation on the table was activated, and a light barrier slowly appeared in next to no time. It was still half red and half blue. Feng Tian Wu's hand pressed down onto the red-colored half of the light barrier. Instantly, a tray that held a wine jug and 3 wine cups appeared before Duan Lingtian's eyes. There are actually 3 wine cups given here. Duan Lingtian's brows raised as he still remembered that the wine jugs in the 7th floor only came with a single wine cup. In other words, if a few people drank together, they had to buy a few wine jugs. Duan Lingtian picked up 2 wine cups and placed them before himself and Feng Tian Wu respectively. Subsequently, he started pouring the wine. When he saw the wine that was red like blood that poured into the cup, his gaze couldn't help but light up. Red charm. At the same time, a strand of fragrance entered into Duan Lingtian's nose, causing the origin energy in Duan Lingtian's body to surge to the point it seemed almost ready to come out. Red charm. It truly deserves its reputation. Big brother Duan, you recognize this type of wine? Feng Tian Wu, who was about to brief Duan Lingtian about the wine, couldn't help but be stunned and asked curiously. Yes. Duan Lingtian nodded. Feng Tian Wu's beautiful eyes flashed as she suddenly felt that this big brother Duan of hers was more and more unfamiliar. Exactly how many secrets does big brother Duan have? Her heart was filled with curiosity towards this. Some people say that when a woman become curious towards a man, it was usually the beginning of being halfway into a chasm. If I'm not wrong, the other type of wine is probably blue longing. Duan Lingtian smiled as he spoke. When she heard Duan Lingtian was even capable of naming the other wine in the 9th floor, Feng Tianwu was first stunned before being unable to restrain the curiosity in her heart, and she asked. Big brother Duan, where exactly did you hear of these two wines? Could it be that you've drank it in the past? According to her knowledge, even if it was the entire Darken dynasty, there was no wine like the Blazer wine of Glaze wine being sold, let alone the Red Charm and Blue Longing. I unintentionally saw it in an ancient book. Duan Lingtian casually found an excuse. He couldn't tell Feng Tianwu that it was because he possessed the memories of a formidable martial emperor that he knew of these two types of wine, right? 761 Chapter 762, Vowing to Die. No matter if it was the Red Charm or Blue Longing, they were recorded in the memories of the rebirth martial emperor. These were two types of wine that could be considered to be fine wine in the foreign lands. Firstly, the Red Charm could be said to be the improved version of Blazer wine, and its medicinal effect and taste far surpassed Blazer wine, whereas Blue Longing was instead the improved version of Glaze wine. This Red Charm and Blue Longing can't be drunk as how I did before. That method of the rebirth martial emperor can only be used on Blazer wine and Glaze wine that are comparatively lower in grade. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart. Feng Tianwu didn't doubt him when she heard his explanation, and then she raised her wine cup and smiled towards Duan Lingtian. Big brother Duan, try and see what difference this wine has compared to the Blazer wine. Duan Lingtian replied as he picked up the wine cup and placed it by his mouth before taking a sip. A scorching aura spread out within his mouth and then covered his entire body, causing him to feel his entire body becoming hot as the origin energy within his body started to roil ceaselessly. The Red Charm is worthy of its reputation. Duan Lingtian couldn't help but exclaim in his heart. Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu were quietly drinking here, yet they didn't know that they'd already become the subjects of discussing of the young men and young women at the other three tables. Have all of you seen them before in the past? A young man asked. No. The others shook their heads. Truthfully speaking, that woman is really beautiful, she's even more beautiful than my concubines. Moreover, that figure, tisk tisk, it truly makes one's mouth water. A young man with a slightly wretched appearance laughed slyly, and his eyes were filled with lust. Damn monkey, I want this woman. Right at this moment, the white-clothed young man that sat on the opposite of the young man with a wretched appearance spoke indifferently. The white-clothed young man sat there and vaguely emitted a trace of the dignity of one in his position, and he was obviously born from extraordinary background. The expressions of the young man with a wretched appearance froze when he heard this, and then he revealed a flattering smile. Since Third Prince wants her, then I natural won't dare act wantonly. Third Prince, should I help you invite her over? Yes. The white-clothed young man nodded with approval, and his eyes revealed burning desire. You must not frighten that beauty, otherwise I'll hold you responsible. Yes, yes. The young man with a wretched appearance nodded hurriedly before leaving his seat and walking towards Feng Tianwu. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu had just finished drinking a jug of Red Charm and had bought another jug of Blue Longing, and they'd even drank a mouthful before noticing the young man with a wretched appearance walking over. Duan Lingtian's expression remained unchanged as he continued to take a sip of Blue Longing, and as he felt the icy coldness in his entire body, he felt comfortable all over. What a good wine. Feng Tianwu's beautiful brows slightly frowned and then eased up, and she took a sip of Blue Longing before lightly closing her eyes to savor her delight at this moment. Young miss, the Third Prince wants to invite you over. The young man with a wretched appearance looked at Feng Tianwu as he squeezed out a smile that was even more unsightly than a crying expression, and then he looked at the white-clothed young man as if he was indicating to Feng Tianwu to look over. After the white-clothed young man noticed the actions of the young man with a wretched appearance, he looked over with a smile as well. But in next to no time, the smile on his face froze. When he saw the white-clothed young man's expression, the young man with a wretched appearance went slightly grim as he turned around, and only now did he notice that Feng Tianwu had utterly disregarded him. Young miss, I'm speaking to you. The young man with a wretched appearance took a deep breath and exerted great effort to suppress the rage in his heart. He didn't dare act wantonly before the Third Prince. But this young man and young woman that he'd never seen in the capital of the Darming dynasty actually dared disregard him. If it wasn't because the Third Prince had taken a fancy to this woman, he would have flared up since long ago. But unfortunately, Feng Tianwu still didn't pay attention to him. Haha, right at this moment, a young man couldn't refrain from laughing. Monkey, looks like your face as the young master of the Hu clan isn't great, third prince is still waiting for you, feel free to ask if you need our help. 1. Monkey, you've suffered a defeat. Looks like even though you usually boast about how great you are, I never imagined that you were only formidable at boasting. Monkey, come back if you're truly unable, you can afford to lose face, but the third prince can't afford to lose face. Numerous young men and young women couldn't refrain from ridiculing the young man with a wretched appearance. The young man with a wretched appearance took a deep breath when he heard this, and his face was covered in a layer of ice as a fierce light flickered within his eyes. Even though he knew his companions were only joking and weren't really mocking him, he still felt he'd lost face. The eyes of the young man with a wretched appearance revealed a ferocious light as he stared at Feng Tianwu and cursed via voice transmission. Stinking wh. Third prince taking a fancy to you is your fortune, don't push your luck. If you don't follow me over to serve the third prince, I'll. Unfortunately, the young man's voice transmission wasn't finished in the end. Slap. A resounding slap sounded out, and the young man's head tilted as a crimson-red palm print appeared on his face. At this moment, Feng Tianwu glared angrily at the young man, and her beautiful face was covered in ice. A slap caused the entire 9th floor to fall into deathly silence. The young man with a wretched appearance was stunned, his companions were stunned, and the other middle-aged and old men in the 9th floor were stunned as well. As for Duan Lingtian, his eyes emitted a cold light as he stared fixedly at the young man with a wretched appearance. He knew clearly in his heart that this young man had surely said something to Feng Tianwu via voice transmission, and it had infuriated Tianwu. Otherwise, it was impossible for Tianwu to be so angry. Ha 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 ha, in next to no time, the deathly silent atmosphere was broken as some of the companions of the young man couldn't refrain from bursting into laughter. Monkey, did you say something you shouldn't have to this maiden? Third prince asked you to invite her over, how could you have infuriated her instead? Exactly, you can't even accomplish a small matter like this, how can you have the nerve to call yourself a friend of the third prince when you go out? The ridicule of his group of companions entered into the ears of the young man with a wretched appearance who was struck into a daze, and he completely recovered from his shock. Stinking wh. You dare hit me, die. The young man glared as he raised his hand to swing his palm at Duan Lingtian. What the hell, even my parents haven't hit me like this in my entire lifetime. How could he swallow his rage from being hit by a woman today? Feng Tianwu revealed a disdainful expression when facing the palm the young man struck at her. In her eyes, the speed of the young man's attack was truly pitiably slow. Right when she was about to make a move, she seemed to have noticed something and put down her hand that she'd just raised. Because a person had made a move before her, and it caused a trace of happiness to flash past her eyes. Bang! Duan Lingtian's hand seemed as if it was assisted by the gods, and it easily grabbed onto and tightly held onto the hand the young man swung at Feng Tianwu. His icy cold eyes looked straight at the young man. The young man's expression went grim and wanted to struggle free, yet he noticed that the strength of this violet-clothed young man that was younger than him seemed to be shockingly strong. Even if he exerted his entire strength, he was unable to struggle free. Kid, you're courting death. Instantly, the young man with a wretched appearance shouted out explosively, and then his other hand formed a fist before smashing towards Duan Lingtian. Swoosh! Origin energy skyrocketed atop his fist as it smashed, and concept followed the origin energy like a shadow, and it seemed like a cannonball that flashed out swiftly while giving rise to a wave of jarring explosions of the air. At the same time, the energy of the heaven and earth surged in the sky above the young man before condensing into form. 10 ancient horned dragon silhouettes appeared first before another 7 ancient horned dragon silhouettes appeared. 7th level of the void initiation stage. 7th level elementary concept. Duan Lingtian moved once more, instantly withdrawing his hand that held onto the young man's hand before grabbing out like a bolt of lightning that moved along a tricky angle towards the fist that smashed at him. Bang! After Duan Lingtian grabbed onto the young man's fist, his gaze went cold, and he didn't hesitate in the slightest to directly exert force in his hand. Crack! Ah! Clear sounds of shattering that were accompanied by a wave of miserable shrill cries sounded out. Subsequently, the young with who had his fist crushed by Duan Lingtian was pushed flying before fiercely smashing to the ground and rolling on the ground in a sorry state. Whoosh, 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 practically at the instant the young man's fist was crushed by Duan Lingtian and was pushed out flying, His group of companions that originally carried ridiculing smiles on their faces all had grim expressions. Besides the white-clothed young man, the third prince, that still sat on the spot, the other young men and women had left their seats. Duan Lingtian couldn't help but be stunned when he saw their actions. Weren't these people ridiculing the young man with a wretched appearance earlier? Why do they seem to be concerned about the young man now? How could Duan Lingtian have known that these people ridiculed the young man earlier because they were familiar with the young man and were joking with him, as they wanted to see the young man make a fool of himself? Yet now, the young man was heavily injured, and as his companions, they naturally had to stand up for him. "Damn monkey, are you all right?" A young man squatted down, and he couldn't help but gasp after he checked the injuries of the young man with a wretched appearance. At the same time, he looked at Duan Lingtian. "What maliciousness! Do you know who he is? What's wrong?" Instantly, the other young men and young women looked at the young man. Monkey's hand, the tendons and meridians in his hand are shattered and are completely crippled, even a grade 3 life recovery pill is probably unable to save him. The young man spoke with a heavy tone. "What?" Besides the white-clothed young man whose brows raised and glanced deeply at Duan Lingtian, the expressions of the other companions of the young man with a wretched appearance instantly darkened. "Kid, you attacked so ruthlessly. Kid, unless you leave behind a hand and a leg today, otherwise, don't dream of leaving." "Exactly, leave behind a hand and a leg." 10 young men and young women surrounded Duan Lingtian's table and eyed Duan Lingtian with hostility as if they were deeply afraid Duan Lingtian would flee. "I don't want his hand and leg." Right at this moment, the young man with a wretched appearance consumed a healing medicinal pill and endured the intense pain to walk over with large strides, and he stared at Duan Lingtian with a cold and fierce gaze. "I want him dead. If I don't kill him, then I, Hu Jun, vow to die." "A hand and a leg." Duan Lingtian's gaze was extremely calm as he swept the 10 young men and young women with his indifferent gaze, and then his gaze descended onto the young man with a wretched appearance in the end. "If you don't kill me, then you vow to die. Looks like you want to die." 1TL note. They call him monkey because the Hu in Hu clan sounds the same as the Hu in Huzi, which means monkey. 762 Chapter 763, Zhao Weiyi. "Looks like you want to die." Duan Lingtian's short words caused all the 11 young men and young women including Hu Jun to become even grimmer, and all of them were enraged by Duan Lingtian. "Attack him together." It was unknown who shouted out abruptly, but the group of young men pounced at Duan Lingtian with tacit understanding, and for a time, the sound of air exploding rose and fell continuously in the sky. Ancient horned dragon silhouettes condensed into form and covered the sky, and they stood there in a threatening manner. Duan Lingtian's gaze was calm when facing the young men and young women that attacked him from all sides, and then his eyes squinted abruptly as a dim light flashed into appearance within his eyes. Thousand illusions. Instantly, Duan Lingtian executed the sole skill that belonged solely to him. An illusory space appeared out of this air to envelop an area of over 10 meters with Duan Lingtian as the center. Even though it had enveloped Feng Tianwu within it as well, yet it didn't act against Feng Tianwu. So Feng Tianwu wasn't affected by it. Subsequently, an unbelievable scene appeared. The group of young men and women that pounced towards Duan Lingtian turned around when they were about to come into contact with Duan Lingtian, and then they entered into a chaotic battle amongst themselves. "Kid, I'll kill you!" Hu Jun shouted out explosively as his intact hand formed a fist and smashed onto his companion and injured his companion. Bang! Subsequently, Hu Jun was struck by another. Bang, 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 the chaotic battle continued on like a raging fire. "Tian Wu, let's continue." Duan Lingtian completely disregarded the 11 young men and young women that were in a chaotic battle, and he held up his wine cup and spoke to Feng Tianwu, whereas, Feng Tianwu was shocked by the scene before her since long ago. What exactly did Big Brother Duan do? She was unable to wrap her head around it no matter how she racked her brains. At the same time that the scene before her caused her to feel shocked, she felt a chill run down her spine, because it was truly too peculiar. This situation feels to be almost the same as the situation when Big Brother Duan defeated Bai Hao. Feng Tianwu couldn't help but recall the scene she saw during the Darken Dynasty's martial competition. At that time, the scene of Duan Lingtian defeating Bai Hao was peculiar like this as well. It wasn't only Feng Tianwu, the crowd of middle-aged and old customers in the 9th floor were dumbstruck now. What are this group of little ancestors that usually domineer over the capital playing at? Even if it was the third prince, his expression at this moment was extremely serious, and the spot between his brows was filled with fear. Who exactly is he? In next to no time, the third prince left his seat. He didn't leave the 9th floor, but walked inwards instead. There was a spacious room in the inner parts of the 9th floor, and it was usually provided for the use and entertaining of guests by the few people with the highest status in the Zhao clan. Ouch! Numerous miserable shrill cries rose and fell, and it wasn't long before only one of the 11 young men and women remained standing, whereas the others were spread all over the ground. Duan Lingtian's brows raised as the dim light in the depths of his gaze was restrained, and he withdrew his soul skill. Instantly, the illusory space shattered. What's going on? After the illusory space vanished, the group of young men and women that lay on the ground were completely dumbstruck when they saw Duan Lingtian being utterly unharmed. Didn't I beat him down? I clearly punched him on the face and caused his head to swell up like the head of a pig. Huang Kui, why has your head swollen up like the head of a pig? The group of young men and young women finally realized a problem after looking at each other. The problem was the people they'd injured earlier wasn't Duan Lingtian but their own companions instead. But why would such an incident occur? A demonic technique. He knows a demonic technique. Someone shouted out. Instantly, the group of young men and young women went pale, and their eyes were filled with terror when they looked at Duan Lingtian once more. The unknown was undoubtedly the most terrifying. Earlier, they'd utterly not reacted to what had happened before they'd directly fallen into Duan Lingtian's demonic technique. Do all of you still want a leg and a hand of mine? Duan Lingtian glanced at the people before him with an indifferent gaze and spoke slowly. All of them looked at each other when they heard this, and then they lowered their heads in embarrassment. There were so many of them yet they weren't even capable of dealing with a little kid that was around the age of 25, and they'd really lost all face. You're called Hu Jun, right? Duan Lingtian's gaze descended onto the young man with a wretched appearance that had one of his hands crippled. The young man's countenance went ghastly pale and he shrunk back slightly with fear when he saw Duan Lingtian stared at him. What do you want to do? Let me tell you, I'm the son of the Hu clan's patriarch. My father won't let you off if you dare touch me. You seem to be carrying out a task for the third prince earlier, right? Duan Lingtian spoke indifferently, and then he raised his head to look at a nearby place before saying, but when all of you encountered trouble, he seems to have flown the fastest. Was it worth it? Was it worth it? Duan Lingtian's words caused Hu Jun to look back with a bewildered expression, and his expression darkened when he saw the third prince had left. The third prince has gone to the room. Meanwhile, a middle-aged man at a nearby table told Hu Jun via voice transmission. Hu Jun's was stunned when he heard this, and then he started laughing loudly. Duan Lingtian frowned. Hu Jun wouldn't have gone mad, right? Kid, don't leave if you have balls. Hu Jun stared resentfully at Duan Lingtian as he spoke with a hateful tone. This caused his group of companions to be puzzled. Third prince has entered the room. Hu Jun spoke as he looked at the one and only room in the 9th floor, and his eyes were filled with reverence as if a terrifying thing was within there. Third prince has entered the room. Instantly, the other 10 young men and young women's gazes lit up. Kid, continue staying here if you have the balls. Exactly. You're a bastard if you dare leave. You're my grandson if you leave. The group of young men and women spoke all at once, and all of them had a common goal, which was to goad Duan Lingtian into staying. Idiots. Duan Lingtian glanced indifferently at this group of young men and women before disregarding them, and then he looked at Feng Tianwu. Tianwu, let's continue drinking. Feng Tianwu nodded. Since Duan Lingtian wasn't afraid, she would naturally not be afraid. Right when the hall on the 9th floor was extremely bustling, the third prince looked at the young man who sat upright in meditation within the room after pushing open the door and entering. Zhao Weiyi, the third prince spoke slowly. The young man wore green clothes and looked to be a little over 30, and he had a handsome appearance. When looked at from afar, he was like a delicate and pretty woman, yet the apple on his throat undoubtedly indicated his identity as a man. He was precisely one of the 2 most outstanding people in the younger generation of the Darming dynasty. The Zhao clan's Zhao Weiyi. So long as it was a member of the Darming dynasty, they knew that this young man whose name and appearance was like a woman possessed an extremely terrifying cultivation and possessed extremely ruthless methods beneath his delicate outward appearance. So long as Zhao Weiyi made a move, it was rare that there were survivors. Lu Hao, do you need something? Finally, Zhao Weiyi slowly opened his eyes and looked at the white-clothed young man with a calm expression as he directly called out the young man's name as if he utterly didn't take the young man seriously. Lu Hao wasn't surprised by this. After all, even if Zhao Weiyi was facing his imperial brother, the crown prince of the Darming dynasty's imperial family, Zhao Weiyi addressed the crown prince directly by name, let alone him. Most importantly, Zhao Weiyi's strength was greatly stronger than him. Zhao Weiyi, if you still don't go out, then our Darming dynasty is going to lose face greatly this time. Lu Hao, the third prince of the Darming dynasty's imperial family, spoke slowly. Zhao Weiyi had a sense of bewilderment between his brows when he heard this. The sound insulation effects of the room were extremely good, and coupled with the fact that Zhao Weiyi was cultivating earlier, he didn't know what had occurred in the hall outside. A pair of young man and young woman arrived on the 9th floor of your Zhao clan's Iceflame Pavilion today. The young man looks to be around the age of 25, and the woman is a little bit over the age of 20, said Lu Hao. And then, Zhao Weiyi asked with interest. And then, Hu Jun's arm was crippled by the young man, and that person attacked ruthlessly, to the point that even a grade 3 life recovery pill is incapable of saving Hu Jun. Lu Hao continued. Zhao Weiyi's brows frowned when he heard this. Since he's capable of crippling Hu Jun, then it shows that he's at least an 8th level Void Initiation stage martial artist, an 8th level Void Initiation stage martial artist around the age of 25. Even Zhao Weiyi couldn't help but be shocked now. After all, even he had only broken through to the 8th level of the Void Initiation stage after the age of 30. Now, when he heard a young man at the age of 25 possessed a cultivation at the 8th level of the Void Initiation stage, he felt it was slightly difficult to accept. As a genius martial artist, he had his own pride, and it was difficult for him to bear the face that someone had a natural talent much greater than his. 8th level of the Void Initiation stage. Lu Hao said in disdain when he heard Zhao Weiyi's judgment. He isn't so simple as to be only an 8th level Void Initiation stage martial artist. What would you think if I told you that Hu Jun's group of 10, 3 8th level Void Initiation stage martial artists, 5 7th level Void Initiation stage martial artists, and 3 6th level Void Initiation stage martial artists attacked him jointly, yet weren't even able to touch the corners of his clothes before falling? Whoosh! Zhao Weiyi instantly sat up right after Lu Hao finished speaking, and a bright light flashed within his eyes. Such a thing happened. Now that you've said this, I'm slightly interested in him. He's most probably from another dynasty and is passing through our Darming dynasty with the intention of participating in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. Come, go meet him with me. Zhao Weiyi walked towards the exit of the room. Wait, Lu Hao stopped Zhao Weiyi. Zhao Weiyi looked at Lu Hao with a puzzled expression as he didn't know what Lu Hao still wanted to say. Zhao Weiyi, I have to warn you about something. Not only did Hu Jun's group of 11 not touch the corners of his clothes when they jointly attacked him. When he spoke up to hear, Lu Hao paused for a moment before continuing. From the beginning until the end, he sat on the spot without moving. He seemed to have utilized some sort of peculiar ability that caused Hu Jun's group of 11 to fight each other, causing all of them to be injured. What? Lu Hao's words caused Zhao Weiyi, who'd always maintained his composure, to finally be unable to refrain from being moved. 763 Chapter 764, Coincidental Meeting. Zhao Weiyi's eyes flickered as his thoughts flew off. Such methods were astounding. It seems that only those formidable demon beasts with extraordinary natural talent are capable of executing similar ability. That ability executed by spiritual forces related to the soul and commonly called a soul skill. At this instant, Zhao Weiyi thought of many things, and then he finally confirmed it. But according to rumor, soul skills belong to the ranks of abilities executed via spiritual force, unless a human martial artist is at the martial emperor stage expert or above, otherwise, it would be impossible to comprehend. Only demon beasts with extraordinary natural talent and possess an innate soul brand were capable of executing an ability via spiritual force like that. All of these were things Zhao Weiyi had seen from an ancient book in the Zhao clan's library. Could it be that he's a demon? Instantly, Zhao Weiyi's pupils constricted as he revealed an astonished expression. If he's really a demon, then everything is easy to explain, even though he looks to be only around the age of 25, but if he's really a demon that has taken human form, then it isn't rare remarkable no matter how young his outward appearance is. Zhao Weiyi's face was filled with fear when he thought up to hear. If that person was really a demon, then that person was at least in existence at the first level of the void transformation stage, as demon beasts could only truly transform into demons and take human form after they broke through to the void transformation stage. When he thought about how the person was very likely a demon of rumor, Zhao Weiyi's heartbeat sped up, and it was difficult to calm down for a long time. An existence at the void transformation stage. Even if it was his Zhao clan, there were only 2 of them, and both of them were at the first level of the void transformation stage. Zhao Weiyi took a deep breath and pressed down the fear in his heart, and his face gradually eased up as he slowly walked out of the room. The Darming dynasty's 3rd prince, Lu Hao, frowned and followed him out. Duan Lingtian quietly savored the blue longing in the hall of the 9th floor, and as he felt the piercingly cold feeling that spread throughout his body, he felt his entire body feel comfortable. Nice. The blue longing was an improved version of the glaze wine, and besides being capable of improving one's origin energy to a certain extent, it was also capable of condensing one's origin energy. Big brother Duan, someone has come out. Feng Tianwu just happened to be facing the direction of the room in the 9th floor, and she sent a voice transmission to warn Duan Lingtian when she saw an unfamiliar young man walk out slowly from the room with the 3rd prince. Duan Lingtian nodded lightly. Actually, even if Feng Tianwu didn't warn him, he'd already noticed the 2 people behind him because their gazes had both descended onto him at this moment. Big brother Weiyi, young master Weiyi, in next to no time, those young men and women who'd consumed medicinal pills to more or less recover their injuries had greeted the young man that walked out of the room. Young master Weiyi, Zhao Weiyi. Duan Lingtian's brows raised as he'd guessed the young man's identity, and he couldn't help but be slightly surprised because his spiritual force had already detected the young man's cultivation at the first possible moment. This Zhao Weiyi was a first-level void interpretation stage martial artist. One of the 2 most outstanding young geniuses of the Darming dynasty had already stepped into the void interpretation stage, so the other young genius, the crown prince, would probably not be any inferior. As expected of the Darming dynasty, cultivation is so prevalent that it created many martial artists with extraordinary natural talent. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart. Actually, not to mention Zhao Weiyi, even those 11 young men and young women who didn't know what was good for them and attacked him had cultivations that similarly caused Duan Lingtian to be shocked. 3 6th level void initiation stage martial artists, 5 7th level void initiation stage martial artists, and 3 8th level void initiation stage martial artists. Only these young geniuses of the Darming dynasty that were gathered together possessed cultivations that were so extraordinary, and if this was the Darkin dynasty, it was practically impossible. Young Master Weiyi, presently, even if it was those middle-aged and old customers in the 9th floor's hall had bowed respectfully to Zhao Weiyi, who walked over slowly. From the beginning until the end, Zhao Weiyi had a carefree expression, and he walked slowly to arrive before Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu's table under the reception of numerous respectful gazes. A trace of astonishment flashed within his eyes when he saw Feng Tianwu, as he'd never seen such an outstanding woman in the Darming dynasty. Even though a gentle and graceful maiden was the best pair for a gentleman, Zhao Weiyi was someone who was infatuated with the martial Dao, and he didn't have the interest of a normal man towards women. Moreover, his marriage had already been decided on long ago before he was born. When the time came in the future, he would directly marry and have children. Love between men and women wasn't the slightest bit enticing to him, and only the martial Dao that seemed to have no end was what he pursued in his entire life. In his eyes, women were only tools used to carry on the family line. So, Zhao Weiyi only glanced at Feng Tianwu before his gaze descended onto Duan Lingtian, who sat opposite of Feng Tianwu. When he saw that Duan Lingtian was really as young as Lu Hao had said, slight surprise couldn't help but suffuse his face, and then he said, "May I know your name?" Duan Lingtian continued drinking his wine as if he didn't heart what Zhao Weiyi said. Zhao Weiyi didn't get angry when he saw this, but even if Zhao Weiyi didn't get angry, it didn't mean that the other people weren't. The group of young men and young women including Hu Jun who'd suffered a loss at Duan Lingtian's hands earlier stared angrily at Duan Lingtian. "Kid, Big Brother Weiyi is asking you something, did you not hear? Young Master Weiyi asking you something is a sign that he thinks highly of you. So quickly answer him if you're sensible, otherwise, don't dream of walking out of this ice flame pavilion today." The group of young men and young women seemed to have found a mountain to rely on when they saw Zhao Weiyi appear, and they weren't the slightest bit worried when facing Duan Lingtian. "Don't dream of walking out of the ice flame pavilion. All of you, Duan Lingtian sipped the blue longing in his wine cup and didn't even raise his head to look at those young men and women, and his tone was filled with disdain. Duan Lingtian's disdain was taken as an act of provocation by these young men and young women, and it caused them to become extremely enraged. Young Master Wei Yu, this kid is too arrogant, you must teach him a proper lesson. The group of young men and women looked at Zhao Weiyi and took him to be their life-saving straw. But unfortunately, no matter how they urged him, Zhao Weiyi still didn't have the slightest intention to make a move, and his eyes concentrated onto Duan Lingtian as he said via voice transmission, "If I'm not wrong, you ought to be a formidable demon, right?" Demon. Duan Lingtian was first stunned, and then he couldn't help but laugh when he heard Zhao Weiyi's voice transmission. Zhao Weiyi was slightly at a loss when he saw the smile that appeared suddenly on Duan Lingtian's face, and then he frowned as he continued to say via voice transmission. "Could it be that I'm wrong? The ability you executed that easily made them fight each other is probably a soul skill that some special demon beasts with extraordinary natural talent possess innately, right? You even know about soul skills." Finally, Duan Lingtian raised his head and glanced at Zhao Weiyi with slight surprise as he spoke via voice transmission. "Looks like you really are a demon." Zhao Weiyi glanced deeply at Duan Lingtian as he continued to speak via voice transmission. "I know you're trying to probe me, but if you say I'm a demon, then I am one." Duan Lingtian smiled and replied via voice transmission. The expression of Zhao Weiyi, who'd already confirmed that Duan Lingtian was a demon after he heard Duan Lingtian admit to executing a soul skill, couldn't help but freeze when he heard Duan Lingtian's voice transmission. What does this violet-clothed young man mean? Could it be that he isn't a demon? But if he isn't a demon, then how can he possibly execute a soul skill? And how can he possibly possess such terrifying abilities at such an age? Right at this moment, two light sounds of footsteps resounded. One of the footsteps in the lead was extremely steady, and every single footstep caused Duan Lingtian's heart to be unable to help but shake slightly. A void transformation stage expert. Duan Lingtian's pupils constricted abruptly. At the same time, his gaze descended towards the source of the footsteps. At that place was two people who were walking slowly into the hall of the 9th floor. The person in the front wore an azure-colored robe, and he was a robust middle-aged man with a face full of stubble and tousled hair. He seemed to be ordinary, yet his aura was actually restrained. Duan Lingtian noticed an extremely dangerous aura on him. Duan Lingtian's gaze descended onto the person behind the robust middle-aged man after that, and with a single glance, Duan Lingtian's eyes squinted as he recognized this person. Su Li. Duan Lingtian hadn't even spoken when Feng Tianwu had already noticed Su Li before him and couldn't refrain from exclaiming with surprise. Su Li, who heard Feng Tianwu's voice, noticed Feng Tianwu at the first possible moment as well, and then he noticed Duan Lingtian, causing his face to be covered with astonishment. Obviously, he never imagined that he would encounter Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu here. Meanwhile, the middle-aged man, a seeming unrestrained appearance, had already sat at an empty table, and Su Li headed towards Duan Lingtian's table after notifying the middle-aged man. Even though the group of young men and young women were eyeing Duan Lingtian with hostility at this moment, Su Li utterly disregarded these people and directly sat by Duan Lingtian's side. "Young Miss Tianwu." Su Li first greeted Feng Tianwu before looking at Duan Lingtian and smiling. "Duan Lingtian, what are you and young Miss Tianwu doing here?" Passing by, Duan Lingtian smiled lightly, and then he looked at the robust middle-aged man in the distance and suppressed his voice as he asked. "Su Li, that's your master?" The robust middle-aged man seemed to be slovenly, yet the feeling he gave Duan Lingtian was even more terrifying than the darkened dynasties by Nanshang. Bai Nanshang had revealed his aura at the void transformation stage before Duan Lingtian at any rate, yet Su Li's master didn't make a move and only stood and sat there, yet he gave Duan Lingtian extremely great pressure. "Yes." Su Li nodded, and then he said to Duan Lingtian's group of two, "Come, I'll introduce you to my master." As he spoke, Su Li stood up and brought Duan Lingtian's group of two to walk towards the robust middle-aged man. From the beginning until the end, the three of them had completely disregarded Zhao Weiyi and the others. Hu Jun gnashed his teeth. Even though he was enraged to the limit, yet he who had suffered a loss at Duan Lingtian's hands didn't dare make a rash move before Zhao Weiyi made a move. Duan Lingtian. Zhao Weiyi frowned. This name seems to be slightly familiar. 764 Chapter 765, feel free to try. Master, this is the Feng clan's young Miss Tian Wu. As for this person, he's that good friend I mentioned to you in the past, Duan Ling Tian. Su Li introduced them after he arrived before the robust middle-aged man with Duan Ling Tian's group of two. Duan Ling Tian. The middle-aged man's gaze flashed past Feng Tian Wu before locking onto Duan Ling Tian. You're the Duan Ling Tian that obtained the first ranking in the dynasty martial competition of the Darken Dynasty half a year ago. Duan Ling Tian pays his respects to senior. It wasn't good for Duan Ling Tian to be disrespectful before this middle-aged man that was Su Li's master. Moreover, besides Qing Nu who was by the side of the mysterious young woman, Han Shuinai, and his father, this robust middle-aged man was absolutely the strongest person he'd met until now. Qing Nu wasn't a human martial artist and her strength was completely restrained, causing Duan Ling Tian to be completely incapable of seeing through her strength. As for his father, he was completely incapable of seeing through him. He does indeed possess great potential. After sizing up Duan Ling Tian from top to bottom for some time, the robust middle-aged man nodded. Duan Ling Tian smiled modestly and notified Su Li before returning to his tablet with Feng Tian Wu. Presently, the gaze Zhao Weiyi shot at him was completely different. Earlier, he finally recalled it after he heard what the robust middle-aged man said. Not long ago, he'd heard of the final outcome of the dynasty martial competitions held by the nearby dynasties, and he was familiar with all the people that were ranked the first in the dynasty martial competitions of those dynasties. The number one ranked young genius in the Darken Dynasty was a young man called Duan Ling Tian. Supposedly, Duan Ling Tian was a young man that looked to be around the age of 25. Now he'd completely confirmed it. The violet-clothed young man that sat before him was precisely that Duan Ling Tian. You're Duan Ling Tian. The third Prince Lu Hao frowned and glanced at Duan Ling Tian with slight fear. He'd heard of the number one ranked young genius in the Darken Dynasty's martial competition in the past. As for Hu Jun and the other 10 young men and women, they'd heard the words of the robust middle-aged man and knew that Duan Ling Tian was the number one ranked young genius in the Darken Dynasty's martial competition. Instantly, their expressions were slightly unsightly. No wonder this young man's strength was so strong, so it turns out that he's ranked at the top amongst the younger generation of the Darken Dynasty. So you're the Darken Dynasty's Duan Ling Tian. The fearful gaze Zhao Weiyi looked at Duan Ling Tian with had completely vanished, and replacing it was coldness and indifference. Earlier, because he suspected that Duan Ling Tian was a formidable demon, he was filled with fear towards Duan Ling Tian and even didn't dare arouse the intention to go against Duan Ling Tian. Yet now, after he found out about Duan Ling Tian's true identity, his expression sank slightly. Duan Ling Tian, you injured so many members of my Darming dynasty within my Zhao clan's Ice Flame Pavilion. Shouldn't you give my Zhao clan an explanation? And give the Darming dynasty an explanation? After he found out about Duan Ling Tian's identity, Zhao Weiyi instantly became overbearing and aggressive. What? You aren't afraid of me any longer? Duan Ling Tian slightly lazily raised his head and glanced indifferently at Zhao Weiyi before speaking lazily. You. Zhao Weiyi's expression darkened. Earlier, because he suspected Duan Ling Tian was a demon, so besides being courteous to Duan Ling Tian, he was even slightly afraid. Now when it was exposed by Duan Ling Tian, he couldn't help but turn angry out of embarrassment. Duan Ling Tian, let me say it one more time, you can either give me an explanation today, or you can fall to the ground. As he finished speaking, the clothes on Zhao Weiyi started fluttering without any wing and his eyes were covered in coldness. An explanation? Duan Ling Tian glanced indifferently at Zhao Weiyi. What explanation do you want? Kneel down and kowtow 3 times to Hu Jun and the others, then I'll take charge of this matter and write it off. Zhao Weiyi spoke with a low voice. Kneel down, kowtow 3 times. Duan Ling Tian hadn't said anything when Feng Tian Wu's expression had already darkened, and she stared angrily at Zhao Weiyi and said, what arrogance. When Su Li who'd just sat down heard Zhao Weiyi's words, his expression darkened, and he instantly stood up as his gaze that was sharp like a sword stared at Zhao Weiyi. He can do anything that you're capable of, yet you might not be capable of doing everything he is. The middle-aged man that sat by Su Li's side spoke indifferently, and his voice wasn't loud, yet it was clearly heard by Su Li. Su Li laughed bitterly and sat down once more. He was naturally able to understand the meaning within his master's words. It was none other than saying Duan Ling Tian was able to deal with anything that he was able to deal with, yet he might not be able to deal with everything that Duan Ling Tian was able to deal with. Kid, did you hear what Big Brother Weiyi said? Quickly kneel down and kowtow 3 times. Hu Jun strode a step forward and ordered Duan Lingtian about while assuming the influence of Zhao Weiyi. Swish. Practically at the instant Hu Jun spoke, a sudden howl of a sword resounded out briefly. Ah! In the next moment, Hu Jun let out a miserable shrill cry. His other hand was severed from the shoulder, causing blood to gush out in a column, and he was only barely able to stop the bleeding with his origin energy after some time. It was precisely Duan Lingtian who had instantly struck out with his sword to sever Hu Jun's arm, and all of this didn't stop there. Swish, 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 Duan Lingtian struck out with his sword like a bolt of lightning, causing numerous sword lights to flash out and mincing up Hu Jun's severed arm that had fallen onto the ground in a short moment, and it was utterly impossible to be reattached. You, how ruthless. When he saw this scene, Hu Jun was angered to the point his face flickered between a livid and ashen expression, and then he was unable to catch his breath and fainted directly. After he fainted, his injury lost the origin energy that stopped the bleeding, causing blood to continue gushing out and taint the entire ground. Monkey. Hu Jun's companions hurriedly moved forward to help Hu Jun stop the bleeding. You dare injure another before I, Zhao Weiyi. Zhao Weiyi's expression was extremely gloomy as he strode forward as if he was capable of shrinking the distance before him, and he'd already arrived before Duan Lingtian in the next moment. Bang! Terrifying origin energy instantly exploded out from him, and the vast energy of the heavens and the earth caused the sky to shake as it converged into the phenomenon of the heavens and the earth. A total of 20 ancient horned dragon silhouettes appeared first. First level void interpretation stage. Feng Tianwu's beautiful face went grim when she saw this scene, and she cried out with shock. Whirlwind. On the other hand, before he had the time to utilize his concept, Duan Lingtian, who saw Zhao Weiyi approach him, had already left his seat first and transformed into a gale that flashed towards the distance. The sound of lightning and wind exploded out everywhere Duan Lingtian passed, and it reverberated in the ears of others. In the sky above him, the phenomenon of the heavens and the earth appeared to first form 12 ancient horned dragon silhouettes before another 9 ancient horned dragon silhouettes and 4 ancient horned dragon silhouettes appeared. 9th level of the void initiation stage. 9th level wind concept. 4th level lightning concept. At the same time, the milky white origin energy that skyrocketed on Zhao Weiyi had instantly transformed into a fiery red color and seemed to have formed into a ball of real flames. Whoosh! In the sky, another 20 lifelike ancient horned dragon silhouettes appeared and coiled down at the side of the existing 20 ancient horned dragon silhouettes. The strength of 40 ancient horned dragons. Compared to the strength Duan Lingtian utilized when he dodged, it was an entire 5 ancient horned dragons worth of strength more. The concept you've comprehended isn't bad, but unfortunately, you're only at the 9th level of the void initiation stage, and you aren't a match for me. Zhao Weiyi's entire body was enveloped by flames and seemed like a god of flames, and he stared coldly at Duan Lingtian as he said slowly, I'll give you one last chance, kneel down, kowtow 3 times, then cripple your own arm and leg. Out of respect for the Darkin dynasty being neighboring to our Darming dynasty, I'll spare your life. Zhao Weiyi finished speaking in a single breath. Based on your tone, you seem to be completely confident of defeating me. Duan Lingtian met Zhao Weiyi's gaze without the slightest fear. I know you know a soul skill that some special demon beasts with extraordinary natural talent are capable of executing with spiritual force, but I want to tell you that I'm a martial artist at the void interpretation stage and my spiritual force is stronger than yours. So your soul skill is utterly useless against me. Zhao Weiyi sneered. Soul skill. Zhao Weiyi's caused everyone besides himself and Duan Lingtian to be unable to help but be stunned. Soul skill. The middle-aged man looked at Su Li and asked. Duan Lingtian knows how to utilize soul skills. I'm not sure. Su Li shook his head and then said, but Duan Lingtian does indeed possess an extremely terrifying ability that's capable of affecting another and causing one to seem as if one was bewitched. Many people call that ability of his as a demonic technique. Could it be that he really knows how to utilize a soul skill? The robust middle-aged man's brows raised, then he looked at Duan Lingtian with interest, and his eyes faintly contained slight anticipation. A human martial artist that was capable of executing a spiritual force ability like a soul skill before becoming a martial emperor was truly unbelievable. He wanted to know if Duan Lingtian was really capable of executing a skill via his spiritual force. Looks like you have a rather good understanding of soul skills. Duan Lingtian's expression still remained calm when facing with Zhao Weiyi, who possessed a cultivation at the first level of the void interpretation stage, and he spoke indifferently. Zhao Weiyi revealed a complacent expression as if he was fully assured of defeating Duan Lingtian. But, since you said my soul skill is useless to you, then feel free to try, said Duan Lingtian. The complacent smile on Zhao Weiyi's face instantly froze, and his eyes seemed as if they were capable of spouting flames. Since it's like this, then I'll fulfill your wish. The number 1 ranked young genius in the Darken Dynasty's younger generation will perish here today. As soon as he finished speaking, Zhao Weiyi had moved out as if he'd transformed into a bolt of lightning that flashed directly towards Duan Lingtian. Right at the instant Zhao Weiyi's figure moved, a dim light flashed into appearance in the depths of Duan Lingtian's eyes. His spiritual force that had been accumulating strength since long ago had instantly fused into the soul brand in the depths of his soul, and he directly executed his soul skill. 1,000 illusions. Instantly, an illusory space appeared and directly enveloped Zhao Weiyi within it. In the next moment, everyone in the 9th floor was stunned. They saw Zhao Weiyi, who approached menacingly, had actually strangely changed direction when he was about to get close to Duan Lingtian, and then he flashed to the side and attacked the air. Presently, he seemed as if he'd lost his mind in the eyes of the others. Master, this is that ability of Duan Lingtian's, said Su Li. If they aren't putting on a show, then perhaps this Duan Lingtian really does know how to utilize a soul skill. The robust middle-aged man's eyes squinted as he muttered. 765 Chapter 766, Overbearing. Big Brother Weiyi. Young Master Weiyi, comma. Instantly, the group of young men and women exclaimed loudly as they wanted to rouse Zhao Weiyi, who seemed as if he was bewitched. Unfortunately, no matter how they shouted or sent voice transmissions, Zhao Weiyi still attacked the air over there and remained completely indifferent towards everything in his surroundings. Duan Lingtian stood at the side and watched coldly. This Zhao Weiyi was truly naive to think that his spiritual force would be similar to his cultivation and only be at the 9th level of the void initiation stage. After all, his current spiritual force was already at the 2nd level of the void interpretation stage. Not to mention Zhao Weiyi, who possessed a spiritual force at the 1st level of the void interpretation stage, even if it was a 2nd level void interpretation stage martial artist, so long as the martial artist wasn't an inscription master, then once the person fell into the illusory space created by his soul skill, 1,000 illusions, it would be utterly impossible for the cultivator to leave his illusory space unless he himself stopped it. It's time to end it. Duan Lingtian's gaze flashed as he thought in his mind, and he moved to arrive behind Zhao Weiyi. Bang! Duan Lingtian pushed out with his palm with a large movement to descend it onto Zhao Weiyi's back, and the vast origin energy poured into Zhao Weiyi before shaking the origin energy on Zhao Weiyi's body to dispersal and injuring Zhao Weiyi. Zhao Weiyi's body shook as he let out a muffled groan, and then he flew out like an arrow that left the bow to tumble to the ground in a sorry state and spit blood violently. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian retracted his soul skill, 1,000 illusions, causing the illusory space to disperse. After Zhao Weiyi left the illusory space, his expression went ominous as he looked at Duan Lingtian, who was completely unharmed. Impossible. You're only a 9th level void initiation stage martial artist, and your spiritual force ought to only be at the 9th level of the void initiation stage. How can your soul skill possibly affect me? You still want to try? Duan Lingtian's calm gaze stared at Zhao Weiyi as he spoke indifferently. Zhao Weiyi's face froze when he heard this, and his eyes flickered with fear. After he found out that it was impossible for him to escape being affected by Duan Lingtian's soul skill, he knew that he wasn't a match for Duan Lingtian, at least for now. At this moment, he was unable to wrap his head around why Duan Lingtian's soul skill was capable of affecting him. Could it be that Duan Lingtian's spiritual force has already attained the void interpretation stage? Now that he about thought of this, there was only this possibility. I admit that I'm not a match for you. But do you think that you can leave the Ice Flame Pavilion safely by defeating me? Zhao Weiyi sneered. Right at this moment, an old man walked out slowly from the room in the 9th floor. The old man wore gray clothes and had an emaciated figure. His expression was cold and indifferent and didn't possess the slightest emotion, as if he was a living corpse. The gray-clothed old man had come out from the inner room within the room. Even though there was only a single room in the 9th floor, yet it was divided into the inner and outer room. Zhao Weiyi would usually be at the outer room so long as he came to the Ice Flame Pavilion, whereas, the inner pavilion instead had a Zhao clan expert residing in it, an expert that guarded the Ice Flame Pavilion. Elder Kun. After the old man came out, Zhao Weiyi bowed respectfully. Elder Kun, The other young men and women looked at the old man who walked out slowly with a perturbed expression, as all of them possessed extraordinary backgrounds and had heard of this old man. Not only was this old man one of the two strongest experts in the Zhao clan, he usually killed without batting an eye, and there were at least around 1,000 people that had died at his hands. The old man nodded to Zhao Weiyi, and he directly disregarded everyone else. In next to no time, he stood before Zhao Weiyi, and his muddy eyes suddenly emitted a sharp and bright light that flashed directly towards Duan Lingtian. "Second young master, how do you think I should deal with him?" the old man asked. His words were obviously spoken to Zhao Weiyi. Zhao Weiyi stared at Duan Lingtian with a cold and indifferent gaze when he heard this, and then he said with a low voice, "Elder Kun, kill him." As far as he was concerned, so long as Duan Lingtian died, then he would have one less formidable opponent during the martial competition of the 10 dynasties that was held a few months from now. Okay, the old man nodded lightly, and his eyes flickered with a bright light as ghastly killing intent suffused them. Whoosh! Along with the grey robe on the old man fluttering, the energy of the heavens and the earth gradually started to roil, and when his entire body was covered in a layer of an origin energy light barrier, phenomenon of the heavens and the earth had appeared in the sky. 200 ancient horned dragon silhouettes appeared instantly, and they possessed a powerful impetus. A void transformation stage expert. Feng Tianwu and Su Li's expressions went grim. Subsequently, Feng Tianwu's hand shook as a pearl made of jade had appeared in her hand. The pearl looked to be simple and plain, yet it was obviously useless as Feng Tianwu had taken it out at this moment. However, when Feng Tianwu's finger moved slightly and was about to crush the pearl, a voice transmission entered into her ears, and it first caused her to be stunned before he put away the pearl. This pearl was a pearl that had been inscribed with a detection inscription. So long as she crushed it, her father, Feng Wudao, would notice it at the first possible moment, and he would rush over as quickly as he could. It was precisely because of the existence of this pearl that her father would feel at ease to allow Duan Lingtian and her to come here. "Kid, since Elder Kun is making a move, you're dead. You even dare touch young Master Weiyi. You're truly courting death." The group of young men and women looked at Duan Lingtian with a gaze as if they were looking at a dead man. "Kid, remember it, the person that killed you is I, Zhao Kun." The old man laughed coldly before swiftly taking a stride out, and with a raise of his hand, vast origin energy swept out in the form of a material palm that instantly appeared before instantaneously vanishing before Duan Lingtian's eyes. Of course, it didn't really vanish, and it instead moved at a speed that was difficult to be caught by Duan Lingtian's eyes. Practically at the same moment, Duan Lingtian felt a terrifying strong wind assault his face and moved closer and closer, and it seemed as if it would smash onto him in an instant. But even then, Duan Lingtian still had a calm expression and was fearless. Swish! Suddenly, a sword howl resounded out for a brief moment. In the next moment, an explosion resounded out in the sky, and the old man's material palm strike that flashed out was blasted apart. The old man's expression went grim, and his gaze was like a bolt of lightning as it swept towards the robust middle-aged man that sat at the nearby table. Swish! Another sword howl resounded out, and it still only appeared briefly. The group of young men and women went pale as they cried out in terror, and their pupils that had constricted were staring blankly at the old man. "Elder Kun," Zhao Weiyi cried out sorrowfully. What a swift strike! Duan Lingtian felt a slight chill run down his spine as he looked at the bloody hole on the old man's throat. He'd only heard a brief sword howl, and had completely not caught any trace of the sword light. Bang! The old man's corpse fell down as a column of blood gushed out from his throat, and it flowed out and seemed to form a small stream. When the gazes of everyone including Duan Lingtian descended onto the robust middle-aged man who was also Su Li's master. Su Li's master didn't even spare a glance at the old man's corpse from the beginning until the end. A void transformation stage martial artist from a mere dynasty's clan dares to make a fuss before my master. He deserves death. Su Li glanced coldly at the old man's corpse and spoke indifferently. "Thank you, senior." Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian lightly smiled as he looked at the middle-aged man and thanked him. Earlier, it was precisely because he'd noticed the aura of the middle-aged man had locked onto the old man that he stopped Feng Tianwu from crushing the pearl that had a detection inscription inscribed on it, and he didn't take out one of the 2 talismans that his father left behind. The middle-aged man was an expert from a power in the foreign lands, and it was extremely easy for him to deal with the old man. But never had Duan Lingtian imagined that the robust middle-aged man would directly kill the old man. It's said that those formidable sword cultivators are extremely ruthless. I can be considered to have experienced it today. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart. There's no need for thanks. You're a friend of Su Li's, so you're naturally a junior of mine. As a senior, protecting one's junior is a matter of course. The middle-aged man waved his hand as he spoke indifferently. Presently, even though Zhao Weiyi was staring hatefully at the robust middle-aged man, he could only forcefully endure it and not dare make a sound. He believed that if the middle-aged man had the intention to kill him, it would be as easy as flipping one's hand. So he could only endure for the sake of surviving. Moreover, since the middle-aged man was capable of instantly killing the one of the two void transformation stage experts who were the strongest in their Zhao clan, it showed that the middle-aged man entirely possessed the strength to annihilate his Zhao clan. If he were to go head-on with an expert like this, their Zhao clan would lose for sure. Duan Lingtian, all of this is because of you. Our Zhao clan can't seek revenge from him, yet we'll surely tear you to pieces before burning your bones and scattering the ashes. Zhao Weiyi's extremely hateful gaze moved on to Duan Lingtian as he vowed in his heart. Duan Lingtian naturally noticed Zhao Weiyi's gaze, yet he utterly did not care. After a short moment, the robust middle-aged man put down the wine cup in his hand and stood up before walking towards the stairway that led to the 8th floor with large strides, and he intended to leave. At the same time, Su Li stood up and followed closely behind the middle-aged man, and he didn't forget to bid his farewells to Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian, I and my master are leaving. I'll see you during the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. Okay, Duan Lingtian replied with a light smile, and he looked at the robust middle-aged man at the same time. Senior, goodbye. At the same time that Zhao Weiyi heaved a sigh of relief from seeing the middle-aged man leaving, he had a decision in his heart. So long as the robust middle-aged man left, he would return to the Zhao clan right away. No matter what, Duan Lingtian must die. Duan Lingtian's blood had to be used to repay the death of Elder Kun. But in next to no time, his expression couldn't help but darken. The middle-aged man slowly turned around and casually swept Zhao Weiyi with his gaze before saying indifferently, if I don't see Duan Lingtian in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties, then I'll visit the capital of the Darming dynasty once more after the martial competition of the 10 dynasties ends to annihilate the entire Zhao clan. After he finished saying these extremely overbearing words, the robust middle-aged man left with Su Li. Thank you, senior. Duan Lingtian started smiling. He knew that with these words that Su Li's master has left behind, not only would the Zhao clan not dare seek revenge for him, they would even have to protect him. Otherwise, once anything happened to him before the martial competition of the 10 dynasties, the Zhao clan would cease to exist. Tian Wu, let's return as well. After Su Li and his master left, Duan Lingtian called out to Feng Tianwu before swaggering out of the Ice Flame Pavilion's 9th floor and vanishing before the eyes of Zhao Weiyi and the others. Zhao Weiyi was angered to the point his body trembled intensely, and he was furious to the extreme yet was helpless. In the end, he was angered to the point of spitting out a mouthful of blood. 766 Chapter 767, Void Interpretation Stage. When Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu walked out of the Ice Flame Pavilion, they didn't see a trace of Su Li and his master. I truly never imagined that we'd be able to meet Su Li here. Feng Tianwu smiled. Yeah, I never expected it as well. Duan Lingtian nodded and was shocked by this as well. After that, Duan Lingtian thought in his heart. Even more unexpected to me is that I was actually able to drink wines like the Blazer wine, Glaze wine, Blue Longing, and Red Charm in Amir Darming dynasty's capital. Looks like because the Darming dynasty is neighboring the foreign lands, besides cultivation being prevalent here, there are many more things that other dynasties don't possess. Big brother Duan, do you think the Zhao clan will send people to protect you? Feng Tianwu couldn't help but laugh when she recalled the scene from before. Duan Lingtian started laughing as well. I truly never imagined that one of the two most outstanding young geniuses in the Darming dynasty, Zhao Weiyi, is actually already a void interpretation stage martial artist. Feng Tianwu sighed. Supposedly, the strength of the Darming dynasty's crown prince is superior to Zhao Weiyi. I presume that the crown prince is probably in existence at the void interpretation stage as well. After both of the return to the inn, they rested for another 2 days before continuing on their journey. Duan Lingtian's group of 3 left the Darming dynasty's capital to arrive at the place they parted with the Azure-Eyed Eagle that day, and the Azure-Eyed Eagle was already waiting there. After they descended onto the back of the azure-eyed eagle, the azure-eyed eagle's wings spread out before seeming to have transformed into a bolt of lightning that instantly vanished on the spot. Its objective pointed straight towards the ancient desert city in the northern desert, as that place was precisely the place the martial competition of the 10 dynasties was held. On the way, Duan Lingtian held the wind concept fragment in his hand and comprehended wind concept with concentration. Presently, he was only a step away from comprehending first-level intermediate wind concept. Once his concept advanced, his cultivation would instantly break through to the void interpretation stage in one go. Time flew by. 2 months of time passed in the blink of an eye. On this day, Duan Lingtian, who sat cross-legged on the back of the azure-eyed eagle like a statue, had finally moved. Strands of material azure-colored energy gushed out from his body before coiling around him as if they'd transformed into gusts of clear wind that were pulsating. Suddenly, origin energy suffused out from Duan Lingtian's body to converge with these azure-colored energy, and they formed real wind. The wind didn't blow out in all directions but instead coiled around Duan Lingtian's body and revolved ceaselessly with a speed that grew swifter and swifter, and it seemed to have formed a vortex that revolved endlessly. Big Brother Duan. Meanwhile, Feng Tianwu was jolted awake from her cultivation by the whirlwind on Duan Lingtian's body. Father, what's happening to Big Brother Duan? Feng Tianwu looked at Feng Wudao who sat nearby, and she asked with a worried expression. Don't worry, it's a good thing. He's about to break through. How shocking was Feng Wudao's discerning gaze. He'd long since see through the change that was occurring on Duan Lingtian, and it was a 9th-level elementary wind concept completing its final transformation. Once the transformation was successful, then a pheasant would become a phoenix, and the elementary wind concept would transform into intermediate wind concept. At that time, Duan Lingtian's cultivation would advance a step further and break through to the void interpretation stage in one go. Breakthrough. Feng Tianwu's beautiful eyes lit up and a smile suffused her beautiful face as she was happy for Duan Lingtian. The revolving speed of the whirlwind that was formed around Duan Lingtian grew faster and faster, and in the end, it even caused the origin energy barrier on the azure-eyed eagle to shake and seem as if it would be tore open at any moment. Qing, retract your origin energy barrier and allow him to be outside, said Feng Wudao to the azure-eyed eagle. The azure-eyed eagle nodded lightly before his origin energy barrier instantly retracted back and only protected Feng Wudao and Feng Tianwu. As for Duan Lingtian, he was completely exposed to the outside world, and he greeted the gusts of piercingly cold strong winds that assaulted his face. But these strong winds hadn't even approached Duan Lingtian when they were completely destroyed by the whirlwind around Duan Lingtian's body, and Duan Lingtian was completely safe within the whirlwind. At this moment, Duan Lingtian's entire body and mind was immersed in the comprehension of wind concept, and he himself didn't know how long had passed and only knew that he wanted to comprehend intermediate wind concept. Unknowingly, he touched the threshold of intermediate wind concept, and he only lacked placing his foot through the door, yet he was stuck at this last step. At the beginning, no matter how he tried, it was useless, and he gradually couldn't help but become slightly dejected. But later on, when he was disappointed to the point of wanting to give up, he instead obtained good fortune when he wasn't even trying, and it allowed him to stride past that last step. Bang! Once this step was taken, Duan Lingtian felt as if he was suddenly filled with enlightenment, and gusts of refreshing wind fused into his body from all of his pores. After all the wind fused into his body, a single thought of his caused his entire body to be surrounded by gusts of piercingly cold azure-colored strong winds once more. Presently, even if he didn't fuse his origin energy into it, the wind concept wasn't much different to normal wind. Suddenly, Duan Lingtian opened his eyes and a bright light flashed within. After he opened his eyes, the first thing Duan Lingtian did was raise his head and look up into the sky above him. The phenomenon of the heavens and the earth had already condensed into form here. Numerous ancient horned dragon silhouettes were gathered there, and they dashed along extremely swiftly with him. A total of 20 ancient horned dragon silhouettes. First level intermediate wind concept. Duan Lingtian's gaze lit up. He knew that he'd succeeded in smoothly comprehending intermediate wind concept, or as it's commonly referred to, void interpretation concept. Comprehending void interpretation concept also meant that he'd obtained the certificate of passage that led to the void interpretation stage. Big Brother Duan, congratulations. Feng Tianwu smiled as she congratulated Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian replied with a smile, and then he couldn't help but ask. How long has passed? It has been 2 months since we left the Darming dynasty, we'll be able to enter the northern desert very soon, said Feng Tianwu to Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian came to an understanding and looked down below, yet he noticed that everything that entered into his eyes was gray, because there no sunlight, his field of vision had been completely obstructed by the clouds and mist. Duan Lingtian nodded, and then signaled to Feng Wudao with a nod before closing his eyes once more, and the first-level intermediate wind concept on his body was retracted along with this. Feng Tianwu was slightly puzzled by the scene before her. Hasn't Big Brother Duan's wind concept already broken through? Why has he closed his eyes again? Could it be? Seeming to have thought of something, Feng Tianwu's beautiful eyes squinted. Big Brother Duan wants to directly charge into the first level of the void interpretation stage. Never had Feng Tianwu imagined that Duan Lingtian's ambition would be so great, and for a time, at the same time that she gasped in admiration because of this, she felt a shapeless force of motivation seeming to be urging her to quickly work hard and cultivate. Instantly, Feng Tianwu sat down cross-legged before starting to cultivate and comprehend fire concept. Unknowingly, Feng Tianwu's body was suffused with origin energy, and when combined with fire concept, it actually transformed into material flames that seemed like real flames. If Duan Lingtian saw this scene, he would surely be greatly shocked. Because the fire concept that Feng Tianwu had executed at this moment wasn't an ordinary elementary fire concept any longer. Her current fire concept was already capable of becoming material, and it also meant that it wasn't far from advancing to become a first-level intermediate fire concept. It was possible for her to officially comprehend intermediate fire concept at any moment. Once that happened, when Feng Tianwu's cultivation advanced a step further, it would be the void interpretation stage. Feng Wudao stood at the side, and his gaze had always been on Duan Lingtian. At this moment, he faintly sensed that the origin energy in Duan Lingtian's body actually had traces of being about to break through. This kid, Lingtian, is truly shocking. He'd only just comprehended void interpretation concept, and he's about to break through to the void interpretation stage. Presently, Duan Lingtian's entire body and soul was immersed in cultivation, and the origin energy within him was improving at an extremely swift speed. His origin energy that had already arrived at the limit of the 9th level of the void initiation stage was already capable of advancing once more because he'd comprehended void interpretation concept. I'll rely on the medicinal strength of the rebirth pill to break through the bottleneck in one go and break through to the void interpretation stage. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart as his origin energy started to pull out the medicinal strength of the rebirth pill that was accumulated within his body to assist his origin energy to increase its speed of improvement a step further. Every single moment, Duan Lingtian was able to clearly sense the origin energy in his body strengthening endlessly. A day passed, 2 days passed, 3 days passed. The 5th day, bang, under his lead and the push from the extremely overbearing medicinal strength of the rebirth pill, the origin energy in Duan Lingtian's body had finally smoothly charged through the final bottleneck of the 9th level of the void initiation stage. After it charged through the bottleneck, his origin energy flowed throughout his body and underwent a transformation at an extremely swift speed. Not long after, his origin energy had completely transformed. After his origin energy transformed, the infant-shaped mist that was condensed from origin energy in Duan Lingtian's dantian had become even more material, and it wasn't so illusory as before. This is the void interpretation stage. Duan Lingtian opened his eyes and lightly clenched his fists. Instantly, origin energy flowed throughout his body and coiled around him in a short moment. The energy of the heaven and earth roiled, causing an extraordinary change to occur in the sky above Duan Lingtian, and numerous ancient horned dragon silhouettes swiftly condensed into form before converging together to form a formidable array. A total of 20 ancient horned dragon silhouettes. Merely his origin energy was comparable to the strength of 20 ancient horned dragons when utilized, and it was precisely the symbol of the first level of the void interpretation stage. I've broken through. Duan Lingtian smiled extremely brilliantly. In his original expectations, it was already not bad if he was able to break through to the void interpretation stage before the martial competition of the 10 dynasties, yet never had he imagined that he'd broken through almost an entire 2 months ahead of time. Perhaps, during this almost 2 months of time, I can rely on the overbearing medicinal strength of the rebirth pill to charge into the 2nd level of the void interpretation stage. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart. 767 Chapter 768, Brother and Sister in Distress. You're really shocking, Kid, you're only comprehended void interpretation concept for 5 days, yet have already smoothly broken through to the void interpretation stage. Such advancement is sufficient to cause any 9th level void initiation stage martial artist to blush with shame. Feng Wudao looked at Duan Lingtian as he sighed. My luck was just good. Duan Lingtian grinned modestly, and he wasn't surprised that he'd broken through to swiftly in the void interpretation stage now. Not to mention his origin energy had attained the limit of the 9th level of the void initiation stage. Even the overbearing medicinal strength of the rebirth pill that was accumulated within his body was sufficient to allow him to swiftly break through to the void interpretation stage. The medicinal strength of the rebirth pill was no joke. Almost 2 months of time, my goal is the 2nd level of the void interpretation stage. Duan Lingtian closed his eyes once more and continued cultivating. Even though he could rely on the concept fragment to comprehend concept while he cultivated, but he didn't do this because he had to concentrate on the mental cultivation method of the 7th form of the 9 Dragons War Sovereign technique. The 7th form of the 9 Dragons War Sovereign technique was called the Sword Dragon form. Besides being cultivated to advance in the void interpretation stage, the 7th form of the 9 Dragons War Sovereign technique, the Sword Dragon technique, was also capable of assisting him in swiftly comprehending sword concept. Not only that, this Sword Dragon form also carried along a high-grade heaven rank offensive martial skill, the 9 Dragons Radiant Flash. The 9 Dragons Radiant Flash was a martial skill that utilized sword concept at its foundation. My wind concept is already a void interpretation concept, and it satisfies the conditions to execute a heaven rank martial skill, but this 9 Dragons Radiant Flash instead requires sword concept as its foundation to be utilized. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart. At the very least, I have to comprehend 1st level elementary sword concept. When he thought up to here, Duan Lingtian didn't think any further and started cultivating according to the mental cultivation method of the Sword Dragon form, and he quickly became completely immersed in it. At the same time that he improved his cultivation with the Sword Dragon form, he was able to comprehend sword force and even sword concept. Of course, it was only capable of assisting him to comprehend until 1st level elementary sword concept, and the following levels had to be comprehended by himself. In this way, I can't divide my attention to comprehend other concepts with a concept fragment until I've comprehended 1st level elementary sword concept. When he thought up to here, Duan Lingtian had no other choice. Now, he only hoped that he would be able to comprehend 1st level elementary sword concept as soon as possible while advancing his cultivation. After he broke through to the void interpretation stage, Duan Lingtian had continued cultivating and had quickly become familiar with the mental cultivation method of the Sword Dragon form, allowing his cultivation to step on the right track. When he awoke from his cultivation, it was already half a month later. The rising sun rose high in the sky and sunlight poured down to the earth, and the sunlight enveloped Duan Lingtian, causing his to be unable to help but narrow his eyes. This is the northern desert. Duan Lingtian looked down towards the boundless ground beneath the azure-eyed eagle, and this ground was covered in desolate plains and hills that were uninhabited and boundless. Yes, Feng Wudao replied. Uncle Feng, you've come here in the past? Duan Lingtian asked curiously. Once. Feng Wudao nodded. The furthest place I've gone is the ancient desert city of the northern desert. The ancient desert city is the city of the foreign lands that's the closest to our various dynasties. Duan Lingtian nodded with understanding. Swoosh. Suddenly, a wave of jarring howls of the wind entered into Duan Lingtian's ears from behind, and it caused Duan Lingtian to be unable to help but turn around and look. He saw an extremely swift demon beast flying towards them, and he could faintly see 2 figures on the back of the demon beast. The demon beast was flying at full speed, and its speed wasn't inferior to the azure-eyed eagle. Coupled with it utilizing its void interpretation concept, it quickly closed the distance between itself and the azure-eyed eagle. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian saw the appearance of the demon beast clearly, and it was a flying demon beast that seemed like a vulture yet was extremely unsightly. A 7th level void interpretation stage demon beast. Duan Lingtian's spiritual force had extremely easily detected the cultivation of the vulture demon beast. Duan Lingtian couldn't help but search through the memories of the rebirth martial emperor, and he quickly found records relating to this type of vulture demon beast. Lightning vulture, a void interpretation stage demon beast that's even more formidable than an azure-eyed eagle. Top figures of the lightning vulture family are even existences at the 9th level of the void interpretation stage. It's even to the extent that a demon had once appeared in the lightning vulture family. Duan Lingtian was shocked in his heart when he found out about the lightning vulture. Swoosh. Meanwhile, the lightning vulture had approached the azure-eyed eagle before moving in parallel with the azure-eyed eagle after a short moment. The two figures on the lightning vulture had entered clearly into Duan Lingtian's eyes. A young man a little over 30 years of age that wore a jade green long robe, and he had starry eyes, sword-shaped brows, a handsome appearance, and a graceful bearing. However, at this moment, his face contained slight anxiousness on it. At the side of the young man was a young woman around the age of 15 or 16. The young woman had an appearance like carved jade, and she held the young man's sleeve tightly as her watery and large eyes revealed an expression of fear. Right when Duan Lingtian was curious about why these two people would have an expression like this, another jarring howl of the wind sounded out from behind Duan Lingtian. Another demon beast flew out to appear before Duan Lingtian's eyes. This demon beast's speed was swift like a bolt of lightning, and it was much faster than the azure-eyed eagle and the lightning vulture. Swoosh. After a short moment, this demon beast surpassed the azure-eyed eagle and chased after the lightning vulture that had already flown far ahead of the azure-eyed eagle. Another lightning vulture. Duan Lingtian saw the appearance of this demon beast clearly, and it was an exactly similar demon beast as the lightning vulture from before. But its body was even more enormous, and the oppressive feeling it emitted was much heavier than the previous lightning vulture. Duan Lingtian's spiritual force stretched out and detected the cultivation of this lightning vulture at the first possible moment. A 9th level void interpretation stage demon beast. Duan Lingtian's pupils constricted instantly when he detected the cultivation of this lightning vulture. Even if it was in the lightning vulture family, a 9th level void interpretation stage lightning vulture was considered to be an extremely rare top figure, yet never had he imagined that he would encounter one. On the back of the lightning vulture stood a black-robed man, and this person was completely enveloped in a loose black robe, causing Duan Lingtian to be utterly unable to see his appearance clearly. Under his curiosity, Duan Lingtian's spiritual force stretched out with the intention of detecting the black-robed man's cultivation. But his spiritual force hadn't even approached the man before it seemed as if it had pierced into a ball of cotton and had no place to exert force on. Your spiritual force isn't bad for your young age. Right at this moment, an extremely hoarse voice suddenly entered into Duan Lingtian's ears, and it revealed a trace of gloominess. Obviously, it was the voice of the black-robed man. From the voice, Duan Lingtian was able to discern that this was an old man. Instantly, Duan Lingtian broke out in cold sweat. He was practically able to confirm that this black-robed man was in existence at the void transformation stage or above. During this half a year of time, besides this black-robed man, he'd already successively encountered two void transformation stage experts. The first was the Darken Dynasty's imperial families by Nanshang, the second was the Darming Dynasty Zhao clan's Zhao Kun. Both void transformation stage experts had two similarities. Firstly, they were both existences at the first level of the void transformation stage. Secondly, they were both dead. The former was killed by the miraculous talisman left behind by his father, Duan Rufeng, whereas the latter had been killed by Su Li's master. We've arrived at the northern desert. Suddenly, a familiar voice entered into Duan Lingtian's ears, and it was Feng Tianwu who'd awoken from her cultivation. Big brother Duan, you've awoken. Feng Tianwu smiled lightly to Duan Lingtian, and in next to no time, she noticed the two demon beasts ahead that grew closer and closer together. What's that? Right at this moment, the two lightning vultures ahead had stopped. The black-robed man that rode the 9th level void interpretation stage lightning vulture had easily surpassed the 7th level void interpretation stage lightning vulture from behind and stopped it. The two lightning vultures were in confrontation, whereas the azure-eyed eagle that Duan Lingtian's group of 3 rode was instead moving closer and closer to these two lightning vultures that were in confrontation. Lu San, are you really going to exterminate us, brother and sister? The young man that stood on the 7th level void interpretation stage lightning vulture spoke to the black-robed man, and it entered clearly into the ears of Duan Lingtian's group of 3. Second young master, I'm only carrying out my orders, I hope you don't blame me. The eldest young master has already spoken that he'll be uneasy in his heart until you're dead. The black-robed man's hoarse voice sounded out. That animal. The young man was extremely angry yet was helpless, and he said with a low voice. You can kill me, but I hope you can let Ping'er go, she's innocent. Second brother, I won't leave you. If we die, we'll die together. Even though the eyes of the young woman by the side of the young man contained terror within it, her expression was extremely firm, and she was fearless at her young age. I'm sorry, second young master, the eldest young master said that both you and the seventh young miss must die. The black-robed man continued as the robes he wore fluttered with the wind. But the black-robed man didn't make a move for now, because his gaze had descended onto the azure-eyed eagle that grew closer and closer to him. More precisely speaking, his gaze had descended onto Duan Lingtian's group of three. Even though Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu felt that this pair of brother and sister were pitiable, and they even felt sympathy for them, yet they didn't dare act rashly. That black-robed man was obviously an extremely terrifying expert, and even Feng Wudao might not be able to go against him. It was fine if they didn't interfere, yet once they interfered, they might even lose their lives. There was no need for them to take a risk for the sake of two strangers. Of course, perhaps if Duan Lingtian utilized the talisman his father left behind for him, he would be able to kill this black-robed man, but there were only 2 talismans remaining in his possession. Using one would be equivalent to having one lesser life in the future. He wasn't magnanimous to the point of being willing to utilize such a precious talisman for the sake of 2 strangers. But unfortunately, something might not go as they wished. Don't move. The black-clothed man shouted out in a low voice as a terrifying aura swept out to instantly envelop the azure-eyed eagle, causing the azure-eyed eagle to stop, and it caused Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu's expressions to turn grim. 768 Chapter 769, Feng Wudao's Strength. The azure-eyed eagle didn't dare move rashly when he was enveloped by the aura of a void transformation stage expert, and he stayed on the spot and flapped his wings as he asked with a low voice. Sir, do you need anything? All of you stay behind. The black-robed man's hoarse voice sounded out. Subsequently, he abruptly raised his hand, causing the origin energy in the sky to condense into form and transform into 4 arrows that flashed directly towards the azure-eyed eagle and Duan Lingtian's group of 3 atop its back. The 4 arrows had only just appeared before the eyes of Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu before it completely vanished from their field of vision in the next moment. It was too fast. Swish, 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 swish. 4 piercing howls that appeared briefly sounded out and were like muffled thunder that exploded out in the ears of Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu, causing their expressions to go grim. A talisman had even appeared in Duan Lingtian's hand, and he was ready to be shot out at any moment. Whoosh! Feng Wudao took a step forward to stand before Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu, and with a raise of his hand, his vast origin energy swept out along with his sleeve to easily stop those 4 arrows. Void transformation stage. The black-robed man originally thought that he would be able to annihilate the 3 people and the demon beast before him with a raise of his hand, yet he absolutely never imagined that there was actually an existence at the void transformation stage amongst them. It seems that I've misjudged. You 4 can leave. The black-robed man looked at Duan Lingtian's group of 3 and the azure-eyed eagle as he spoke slowly. At the same time, his aura that had enveloped the azure-eyed eagle was retracted after he finished speaking. It's easier to summon an evil spirit than to allay it. Could it be that you haven't heard this saying? Feng Wudao spoke indifferently. What, you want to fight me? If I'm not wrong, you ought to be the top martial artist from one of the dynasties in the south, right? According to my knowledge, the strongest martial artist in those dynasties is only at the 2nd level of the void transformation stage. Origin energy pulsated out from the body of the black-robed man as he spoke. In the next moment, 400 ancient horned dragon silhouettes coiled down from the sky above him, and they were accumulating strength while waiting to be deployed. 3rd level void transformation stage expert. The pupils of both Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu constricted. Possessing a strength comparable to the strength of 400 ancient horned dragons merely from origin energy was precisely the symbol of a 3rd level void transformation stage expert. If you leave now, I'll take it as nothing had happened earlier, otherwise, all of you will have to stay behind. After the black-robed man revealed a cultivation at the 3rd level of the void transformation stage, he spoke out slowly. 3rd level of the void transformation stage. Unexpectedly, after he saw the cultivation the black-robed man revealed, Feng Wudao's calm gaze has lit up, and billowing battle intent arose from his body. Swoosh! In the next moment, Feng Wudao soared out with an imposing manner that shot into the sky like a rainbow, and he'd arrived nearby the lightning vulture below the black-robed man in the blink of an eye. Swish! A sword howl instantly resounded out for a brief moment. In the next moment, the pupils of Duan Lingtian, Feng Tianwu, and the pair of brother and sister on the other lightning vulture had constricted instantly. The lightning vulture that was ridden by the black-robed man had been split into 2. A 9th-level void interpretation stage demon beast was instantly killed with a single strike of Feng Wudao's. As for the black-robed man, he'd already left the lightning vulture early on when Feng Wudao struck out, and he stood higher up in the air and looked down at Feng Wudao. Feng Wudao stood proudly in the sky as the sword condensed from origin energy in his hand gradually dispersed. In the sky, the phenomenon of the heavens and the earth that had just condensed, the 400 ancient horned dragon silhouettes in the sky slowly vanished without a trace. Uncle Feng is a 3rd-level void transformation stage expert as well. Duan Lingtian's pupils couldn't help but constrict when he saw this scene. Even though he'd guessed since long ago that Feng Wudao might be a void transformation stage expert, but he'd never imagined that Feng Wudao would be a 3rd-level void transformation stage expert. Such a strength was greatly stronger than the Darken Dynasty's imperial families by Nanshang that he killed with the talisman. The #1 expert of the Darken Dynasty ought to be this Uncle Feng of his. If I knew earlier that Uncle Feng's strength was so strong, I would have brought Uncle Feng along when I went to the Flying Rainbow sect that day. In that way, I could have saved a talisman. After his surprise, this was the first thought that emerged in Duan Lingtian's mind. He recalled the talisman he'd used that day, and it was slightly difficult for him to get over it. That was his life-saving talisman. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian noticed that Feng Tianwu's face was covered with surprise, and he instantly realized that Feng Tianwu didn't know about Feng Wudao's strength beforehand as well. You aren't from those dynasties as well. After he saw the cultivation revealed by Feng Wudao, the black-robed man's hoarse voice faintly contained slight fear. But unfortunately, Feng Wudao utterly disregarded him and instantly vanished before the eyes of Duan Lingtian and the others, and when he appeared once more, he was already not far away in front of the black-robed man. Swish! A sword howl that resounded out briefly was heard once again, and Duan Lingtian noticed that the black-robed man had vanished before his eyes as well. Feng Wudao and the black-robed man were both existences at the 3rd level of the void transformation stage. So once they started moving, Duan Lingtian was utterly incapable of catching their movements with his current cultivation. He was unable to see anything, causing Duan Lingtian to be slightly lacking in interest. Swish, 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 in the sky, piercing howls that lasted for a brief moment rose and fell. Of course, these piercing howls weren't only from the 3-foot-long blade in Feng Wudao's hand, and a bow and an arrow had appeared in the hands of the black-robed man when he made a move. A bow that was of equal quality as the grade 3 spirit sword in Feng Wudao's hands. Besides that, the arrow used by the black-robed man was also a grade 3 spirit weapon, and because it was inscribed with a special inscription formation, the arrow would return to him at the first possible moment every time it was shot out, allowing him to take the next shot. The black-robed man was the first person that Duan Lingtian had seen using a bow and arrow to do battle, and this sort of weapon that very few people utilized was utilized skillfully in his hands and possessed an extremely formidable might. This could be seen from the fact that he was capable of fighting evenly with Feng Wudao. But unfortunately, his speed was too swift, so it was extremely difficult for Duan Lingtian to clearly see his movements, and Duan Lingtian could only occasionally see his posture when he bent his waist and drew his bow. My current cultivation is still too low, it's fierce battle that's so difficult to come by, yet I'm actually baffled by it, and it's truly a pity. Duan Lingtian sighed. Duan Lingtian's gaze unconsciously moved slowly to descend onto the young man and young woman who were on the back of the other lightning vulture. The young man was looking at the battle before him with interest. He's able to see the movements of Uncle Feng and that old fellow. Duan Lingtian's heart jerked, and he felt slight disbelief. Under his curiosity, Duan Lingtian's spiritual force stretched out to envelop the young man with the intention of detecting the young man's cultivation. This detection shocked Duan Lingtian to the point his pupils couldn't help but constrict. Eighth level of the void interpretation stage. He couldn't help but be shocked because this young man that looked to be a little over 30 years of age was actually in existence at the 8th level of the void interpretation stage. Even if he took good care of his appearance, he's at most around the age of 35 now. Duan Lingtian gasped. Amongst the younger generation that he'd encountered in this lifetime, it seemed that only that young girl, Han Shuinai, could firmly dominate over this person in terms of natural talent in the martial Dao. This little girl wouldn't be a little freak like Shuinai, right? In next to no time, Duan Lingtian's spiritual force moved to detect the young woman's cultivation, and in the end, he noticed to his shock that the young woman was only a 2nd-level void prying stage martial artist. The difference in strength between the young man and young woman was like a chasm, and they utterly did not seem to be people of the same world. But these two people just happened to be a pair of brother and sister. Ha ha, thank you. Suddenly, a wave of hearty laughter entered into Duan Lingtian's ears, and it caused Duan Lingtian's expression to be unable to refrain from freezing because this voice was familiar to him. This was of hearty laughter belonged exactly to Feng Wudao. Feng Wudao stood in the air as the energy of the heavens and the earth roiled in the sky once more, and it condensed into numerous ancient horned dragon silhouettes in the end. First 200 ancient horned dragon silhouettes appeared, and then another 140 ancient horned dragon silhouettes appeared. Uncle Feng has broken through. Duan Lingtian's brows raised as he muttered. The scene before him undoubtedly indicated that Feng Wudao had smoothly broken through from the third level of the Void Transformation stage to the fourth level of the Void Transformation stage in the battle with the black-robed man. The fourth level of the Void Transformation stage possessed an extra strength of 200 ancient horned dragons when compared with the third level of the Void Transformation stage. When this extra strength was coupled with the amplification ability of the Grade 4 Spirit Sword in Feng Wudao's hands that Duan Lingtian had personally refined, it added another strength of 140 ancient horned dragons to him. Presently, Feng Wudao's entire strength had increased by an entire strength of 340 ancient horned dragons when compared to his strength from before. You actually broke through. The black-robed man's hoarse voice was filled with disbelief when he saw this. You actually used me carry out a breakthrough of your own. When the black-robed man saw cold lights suffuse Feng Wudao's eyes and Feng Wudao seemed to be ready to attack once more at any moment, he said in a low voice, no matter who you are, if you dare kill me, then the Northern Mountains Lu clan won't let you off. Northern Mountains Lu clan? Feng Wudao said indifferently, I've never heard of there being such a clan in the various dynasties, so in this way, you ought to be from a clan in the foreign lands. Exactly. The black-robed man spoke coldly. Lu San, don't forget that you're only a lowly servant of our Lu clan. A mere lowly servant daring to use the clan to pressure others is truly laughable. The slanted brows of the young man that stood on the back of the lightning vulture raised as he sneered. I've never heard of the Northern Mountains Lu clan, but I know that the Lu clan might not find out that I killed you here today. Feng Wudao spoke slowly. The black-robed man's countenance instantly went pale when he heard this. In the next moment, the expression on his face froze completely. Blood flowed out from the hole that appeared out of thin air between his brows. At the same time, Feng Wudao's body had appeared before the black-robed man like a shadow, and blood slowly dripped down from the Grade 3 Spirit Sword in his hand. After Uncle Feng broke through, I'm even unable to hear the howl of his sword. Duan Lingtian's heartbeat quickened abruptly as he deeply realized how terrifying a fourth-level Void Transformation stage expert was. Thank you, Senior, for your life-saving grace. Lu Bai will engrave it in my heart. The young man that stood on the lightning vulture pulled along the young woman by his side to bow with him as he thanked Feng Wudao respectfully. 769. Chapter 770, Skywolf Fort. Feng Wudao glanced indifferently at Lu Bai before vanishing on the spot, and when he was already by Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu's side when he appeared once more. May I know Senior's great name so that Lu Bai can repay you in the future? Asked Lu Bai. There's no need. Feng Wudao said with a calm tone, if it wasn't for that person taking the initiative to provoke me today, I had no intention of saving you. Besides that, Cloud Continent is so vast that the two of us will probably not have the chance to meet again in the future, let alone repay me. When he finished speaking, Feng Wudao looked at the azure-eyed eagle. Ching, let's go. The azure-eyed eagle nodded before its wings swept out, and then its body flashed off into the distance. No matter what, Lu Bai will engrave your kindness today in my heart. Lu Bai spoke in a loud voice when he saw Feng Wudao leaving. At the same time, his gaze moved from Feng Wudao to flash onto the faces of Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu as if he wanted to deeply remember their appearances. Lu Bai's gaze was extremely amiable, and it caused Duan Lingtian to be unable to help but return a smile. Lu Bai looked from afar and only returned to his sense after the azure-eyed eagle flashed off into the distance and became hidden from view by the clouds and mist, and then his eyes flickered with cold lights. Lu Song, I didn't have any intention of competing you, but since you want to be ruthless by not only killing Mem but even wanting to kill Seventh Sister, then I have no choice but to compete with you. Second brother, who do you think that senior from before is? Could he be someone from the dynasties in the south? The young woman that followed by Lu Bai's side asked curiously. It's possible, yet not entirely. Pinger, we ought to leave. As soon as he finished speaking, Lu Bai looked at the lightning vulture. With a command, the lightning vulture transformed into a bolt of lightning that vanished within the clouds and mist in the sky. Congratulations, Uncle Feng. After the azure-eyed eagle flew for a distance, Duan Lingtian congratulated Feng Wudao. Feng Wudao's breakthrough to the 4th level of the void transformation stage was undoubtedly something worthy of congratulations. Father, I actually didn't know that you were a 3rd level void transformation stage martial artist in the past. You really took pains to conceal it from me. Feng Tianwu smiled bitterly. Feng Wudao smiled lightly yet didn't speak. Father, how did you suddenly break through to the 4th level of the void transformation stage? Feng Tianwu asked. I was already a step away from the 4th level of the void transformation stage, and I just happened to obtain the critical factor to break through after battling that black-robed man. Now that I speak of it, it's all thanks to him that I was able to break through, said Feng Wudao. Feng Tianwu came to a sudden understanding. Uncle Feng's battle intent was aroused when the black-robed man revealed a cultivation at the 3rd level of the void transformation stage. Obviously, Uncle Feng had aroused the intention to utilize the black-robed man to undergo a breakthrough since that moment. Duan Lingtian was shocked in his heart as he recalled the scene from before. After this battle, Duan Lingtian knew clearly in his heart that even if it was in the 10 dynasties, Feng Wudao was probably a top expert, and perhaps only the foreign lands possessed people that could be a match for him. Time flew by in the twinkling of an eye. In the blink of an eye, there were only 10 days before the martial competition of the 10 dynasties began. On this day, the origin energy on Duan Lingtian, who sat cross-legged on the back of the azure-eyed eagle while allowing the wind and rain to batter him, skyrocketed for no reason or rhyme, and it seemed like a ball of milky white flames. In the next moment, this milky white flame shook as if it had undergone some sort of change. Whoosh! Instantly, the energy of the heavens and the earth roiled in the sky before the phenomenon of the heavens and the earth appeared. 30 ancient horned dragon silhouettes coiled down from the sky, and they looked extremely magnificent. At the same time, the milky white flames shook and shot into the sky once more, and it actually faintly seemed to have transformed into an enormous sword. But unfortunately, this enormous sword didn't last for long. Along with the dispersal of the 30 ancient horned dragon silhouettes, the enormous sword that enveloped Duan Lingtian had retracted itself instantly before transforming into a ball of flames that completely fused into his body. At practically the exact same time, Duan Lingtian opened his eyes, and a sword light faintly flashed past his eyes and it revealed a sharp feeling. 2nd level of the void interpretation stage. Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up. Even though he knew that the medicinal strength of the rebirth pill was overbearing, yet never had he imagined that it was overbearing to the point it had assisted him to break through once more in such a short period of time. There's also the advanced sword force. Not only that, through the cultivation of the sword dragon form, Duan Lingtian had taken a large stride on the path to comprehending sword concept. He who had comprehended advanced sword force was only a step away from comprehending sword concept. Freak! A voice entered into Duan Lingtian's ears, and it was the voice of the azure-eyed eagle. You've broken through successively in a short period of 2 months, as expected of the man that Tianwu has taken a fancy to. Duan Lingtian smiled embarrassedly. Not bad. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian noticed Feng Wudao's gaze flash over, and the gaze Feng Wudao shot at him was filled with surprise. Has Tianwu not broken through yet? Duan Lingtian's gaze descended onto Feng Tianwu, who sat cross-legged in cultivation nearby. She broke through to the 1st level of the void interpretation stage 3 days ago, said Feng Wudao. Duan Lingtian was instantly shocked when he heard this. His spiritual force couldn't help but stretch out, and it detected Feng Tianwu's cultivation in the first possible moment. It was indeed at the 1st level of the void interpretation stage without a doubt. Tianwu's improvement caused his to feel shocked. After all, Tianwu didn't possess the rebirth pill. These 2 little freaks have already surpassed your achievements from all those years ago, said the azure-eyed eagle. His words were obviously spoken to Feng Wudao. Feng Wudao didn't mind it, and his broad-minded gaze looked ahead. They aren't like me. Even the martial competition of the 10 dynasties is only a starting point for them, and the entire Cloud continent is the true stage that belongs to them. Feng Wudao's words were filled with confidence towards Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu. Of course, the precondition for all of this is that Tianwu is able to live past the age of 30. As he finished speaking, Feng Wudao couldn't help but sigh, as the fire spirit body of his daughter had always been a worry of his. Don't worry, Uncle Feng, Tianwu is so kind-hearted, so there'll surely be a way. Duan Lingtian consoled. I believe in the prediction. Feng Wudao nodded. Duan Lingtian was first stunned when he heard this, and then he couldn't help but laugh bitterly. He naturally knew what the prediction Feng Wudao spoke of was, and it was none other than the prediction that said he could help Feng Tianwu tide over the calamity she would face when she turned 30. Swish, swish, swish. Suddenly, 3 cold howls of the wind sounded out from their surroundings, and it entered clearly into Duan Lingtian's ears. Duan Lingtian noticed 3 flying demon beasts heading towards them with an extremely swift speed, and there were varying amounts of people on the backs of these demon beasts. Amongst them were old people, middle-aged people, and young people. They ought to be the young geniuses and representatives from the various dynasties, just the amount of young geniuses from the 10 dynasties that have obtained the qualifications to participate in the martial competition are a total of 100, and coupled with the representatives of the various dynasties. There'll surely be many people that are gathering here this time. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. As they continued forward, they encountered another 2 demon beasts. At the same time, a small black dot in the distance had appeared before Duan Lingtian's eyes. The small black dot was ceaselessly enlarging within Duan Lingtian's field of vision, and in the end, it transformed into a city that grew closer and closer. A city like this stood in the boundless desert, yet it didn't give others the slightest feeling of unusualness, and it seemed as if it ought to be like this. The ancient desert city. Duan Lingtian's brows raised as he guessed that the city ahead ought to be their destination and the place the martial competition of the 10 dynasties would be carried out. What a large city! After they came closer to the ancient desert city, Duan Lingtian was greatly shocked. In terms of the area it occupied, the city before his eyes was more than 10 times the size of the Darkin dynasty or Darming dynasty's capital. Large, too large. This city seemed to be extremely ancient and had obviously experienced ages of time. This city didn't have a city gate, nor did it have guards, and anyone was able to enter and leave it freely. Ching, go in, said Feng Wudao. Instantly, the azure-eyed eagle plunged down while speeding up, and in the blink of an eye, the azure-eyed eagle had entered into the ancient desert city from the sky, causing the streets of the city to appear before Duan Lingtian's eyes. There were many martial artists flying in the sky above the city, and there were also many demon beasts flying past. Duan Lingtian didn't dare rashly utilize his spiritual force to detect another's cultivation, as slight carelessly could cause him to annoy an expert, and then he would undoubtedly be struck with misfortune. Even though Feng Wudao was in existence at the 4th level of the void transformation stage and could dominate over the 10 dynasties, in the foreign lands, existences that were similar or more formidable than Feng Wudao could be found everywhere. Not to mention anywhere else, just the ancient desert city probably had many existences that were stronger than Feng Wudao. This is the ancient desert city. Meanwhile, Feng Tianwu woke up from her cultivation, and she curiously sized up this ancient city before her eyes. Uncle Feng, where are we going now? Duan Lingtian asked Feng Wudao. The Sky Wolf Fort. Feng Wudao's gaze descended towards the north of ancient desert city at the first possible moment. There was precisely a vast place similar to the imperial palace standing there. This place is even larger than the Darkin dynasty's imperial palace. Feng Tianwu's eyes squinted, and she couldn't help but gasp in admiration. Just the area it occupies is more than 2 times the size of the Darkin dynasty's capital or even the Darming dynasty's capital. Uncle Feng, you said this is the Skywolf Fort? Duan Lingtian asked curiously. The Skywolf Fort can be said to be the owner of the ancient desert city, and it's a formidable power of the foreign lands that's nearby to the 10 dynasties. The martial competition of the 10 dynasties this time is held by the Skywolf Fort. Feng Wudao's expression was slightly serious when he introduced the Skywolf Fort. This also caused Duan Lingtian to deeply realize how formidable and terrifying this Skywolf Fort was, and it completely surpassed the 10 dynasties. Let's go. Feng Wudao spoke out, and the Azure Eyes Eagle headed towards the Skywolf Fort. After they came close to Skywolf Fort, Duan Lingtian could see that there were almost no people or demon beasts in the sky above Skywolf Fort, and all those human martial artists and demon beasts that flew in the air would circumnavigate it from afar before they even approached Skywolf Fort. It was as if the Skywolf Fort was a dreadful monster. 770 Chapter 771, Trash. The Azure-Eyed Eagle carried Duan Lingtian's group of 3 and had just approached Skywolf Fort when a person flew out of Skywolf Fort to directly stop the Azure-Eyed Eagle. This person was a middle-aged man that wore a green-colored uniform. The middle-aged man had an ordinary appearance, and on the left chest of the green clothes was a special badge that possessed a savage Skywolf pattern inscribed on it. The eyes of the Skywolf were copper-colored. "Why have you come to our Skywolf fort?" the middle-aged man asked. "We're members of the Darkin Dynasty, and we've come here to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties." Feng Wudao explained their reason for arrival here. The middle-aged man's gaze descended onto Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu when he heard Feng Wudao, and then it finally locked onto Duan Lingtian while revealing slight surprise. As far as he was concerned, this violet-clothed young man ought to be one of the 10 young geniuses of the Darkin dynasty that had obtained the qualifications to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties, and Duan Lingtian was so young that he couldn't help but be surprised. As for the red-clothed young woman, he thought that she'd come to join in the fun because her age was truly too young. "Please follow me." The middle-aged man led the way ahead. Meanwhile, Feng Wudao asked the azure-eyed eagle to wait outside the ancient desert city before following the middle-aged man with Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu to head all the way west. All along the way, Duan Lingtian curiously sized up the surroundings. The Skywolf fort was divided into 2 areas. The area they were in now was the area that was towards the south and was as large as the Darkin dynasty's capital, and there was a combat arena standing in this vast area. There were no spectating areas around this combat arena, and people could only stand in the air to watch for the surroundings. That place is the combat arena. The martial competition of the 10 dynasties will be held on 10 days from now. The middle-aged man introduced. Not long after, Duan Lingtian's group of 3 approached a continuous complex of buildings under the lead of the middle-aged man, and these buildings were all pavilions. Every single pavilion had a plaque hanging on it, like Chrysanthemum Pavilion, Osmanthus Pavilion, Peony Pavilion, and so on and so forth. There were high and low pavilions amongst them, and all of them were named with flowers. When he approached the pavilions, Duan Lingtian noticed that a middle-aged man that wore a similar green-colored uniform was leading 8 people to enter into a pavilion that had 4 floors. Those 8 people ought to be from one of the dynasties. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian's group of 3 had arrived before a pavilion that had 2 floors under the lead of the middle-aged man. "This Narcissus Pavilion will be your residence. Besides that, please register your name and your dynasty with me, little brother." The middle-aged man spoke as he took out a brush and paper. Duan Lingtian nodded, and then he spoke his name and his origins. "You're registering people that are participating in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties?" The nearby Feng Tianwu asked. "Yes." The middle-aged man nodded. "Then add my name in," said Feng Tianwu. The middle-aged man was first stunned when he heard this, and then he reacted to Feng Tianwu's words, causing his gaze that was filled with disbelief to descend onto Feng Tianwu. "Could it be, you're a young genius from the Darkin dynasty that's participating in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties?" At the beginning, he thought only Duan Lingtian was a young genius from the Darkin dynasty that had obtained the qualifications to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. Even then, he was shocked by Duan Lingtian's age. A young man that looked to be around the age of 25 actually being able to become eminent amongst the group of young experts in the Darkin dynasty was truly something that was rare and commendable. Yet now, when he realized that Feng Tianwu was a young genius that had come to participate in the martial competition as well, he was shocked. This red-clothed young woman looked to be a little over 20 at most, and even if she took good care of her appearance, she would be around 25 at most. Looks like there aren't any outstanding geniuses in the younger generation of the Darkin dynasty, otherwise, how could they allow 2 people that are so young to seize the qualifications to participate in the martial competition? The middle-aged man registered Feng Tianwu as he thought as a matter of course. After he finished registering them, the middle-aged man gave Duan Lingtian's group of 3 a command token each. "These 3 command tokens will allow all of you to move freely within the outer fort of our Skywolf fort. As for the inner fort, it's prohibited to everyone but disciples of our Skywolf fort. Gather on the combat arena in the outer fort 10 days from now. At that time, the young geniuses from the 10 dynasties will be gathered to carry out the martial competition of the 10 dynasties." As soon as he finished speaking, the middle-aged man left directly. Whereas Duan Lingtian's group of 3 entered into Narcissus Pavilion. There was a total of 2 floors in the Narcissus Pavilion, and every single floor was extremely spacious and had 2 rooms and a balcony. Subsequently, Duan Lingtian's group of 3 settled down in Narcissus Pavilion. After he entered into his room, Duan Lingtian sat cross-legged on his bed and calmed his heart before starting to cultivate 9 Dragons War Sovereign Technique, Sword Dragon Form. Presently, Duan Lingtian only had a single urgent target, and that was to comprehend sword concept. So long as he comprehended sword concept, he would be able to cultivate the high-grade heaven rank martial skill, 9 Dragons Radiant Flash. If I'm able to successfully cultivate the 9 Dragons Radiant Flash before the martial competition begins, then my strength will surely improve a step further. Duan Lingtian immersed his entire body and mind into cultivating, and he seemed to have forgotten the time. Big Brother Duan. Big Brother Duan. After an unknown amount of time, a wave of anxious sounds entered into the room in Duan Lingtian's ears, and it caused Duan Lingtian to awaken from his cultivating. Tian Wu. Duan Lingtian opened the door and looked at Feng Tian Wu, who stood outside the door. Has the martial competition started? Why do I feel that I've only cultivated for a short time? Big Brother Duan, there's still another 5 days before the martial competition. I called you out because Big Brother Zhang has come twice, and he has asked us out for a meal. Feng Tian Wu smiled. Duan Lingtian walked out of Narcissus Pavilion with Feng Tian Wu, and he noticed Zhang Shouyang was already waiting outside. Big Brother Zhang. Brother Lingtian. Zhang Shouyang returned a smile and said warmly, let's go have something to eat. I've arrived at this Skywolf Fort for 3 days, yet I still haven't gone out to have a good stroll. All right. Duan Lingtian nodded, and then he said to Feng Tian Wu, go tell Uncle Feng. Feng Tian Wu nodded, and then she went to notify Feng Wu Dao. Brother Lingtian, you're really something, you even have a wife that follows you in everything. Zhang Shouyang joked. Duan Lingtian laughed bitterly. Big Brother Zhang, you know that I have Little Fei and the others, so, don't make this sort of joke in the future. I and Tian Wu are only ordinary friends, and we don't have the type of relationship that you imagine. Aren't you the son-in-law of Lord Wu Dao? It's spread all over the Darkened Dynasty. Zhang Shouyang was stunned. It's difficult to explain, Duan Lingtian sighed. Meanwhile, Feng Tian Wu had returned, so he didn't explain further. Let's go. Duan Lingtian's group of 3 soared side by side into the sky, and they left the Skywolf Fort in the blink of an eye before looking around to search for a nearby restaurant. In next to no time, they found a restaurant that was comparatively large in scale. After they sat down at a table that was by a window, Duan Lingtian couldn't help but stretch out his spiritual force to envelop Zhang Shouyang, and he detected Zhang Shouyang's cultivation at the first possible moment. First level of the void interpretation stage. Big Brother Zhang has broken through as well. Even though Duan Lingtian wasn't surprised by this, he was happy for Zhang Shouyang. He'd known Zhang Shouyang before he knew Feng Tian Wu, and Zhang Shouyang had saved his life once. So he'd always maintained his previous respect to Zhang Shouyang and took him as a big brother. Oh, aren't these the experts of the Darkened Dynasty? You seem to be called Zhang Shouyang. Suddenly, an irritating voice approached from afar. At the same time, 2 young men around the age of 37 or 38 and were almost middle-aged man walked over side by side to stand before Duan Lingtian's table, and the blue-clothed young man amongst these 2 people was looking at Zhang Shouyang with a ridiculing gaze. What? The lesson I taught you yesterday isn't enough? Zhang Shouyang glanced at the blue-clothed young man with disdain, and then he shouted coldly. FK off. The expression of the blue-clothed young man went grim, and he said with a cold voice, Zhang Shouyang, I admit that I'm not a match for you, but your opponent today isn't me. When he spoke up to hear, he looked at the thin young man with a sedate expression who was by his side, and a modest expression suffused his face. Big Brother Kong, yesterday, it was he who said that all the young geniuses of our Darchu dynasty that have come to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties are trash and had suffered defeat at his hand. Zhang Shouyang frowned slightly. When did I say all this? But when he saw the icy cold gaze of the thin young man sweeping over, he couldn't be bothered to explain. If he were to explain at this moment, then it would undoubtedly cause his imposing manner to seem inferior to the other young man. Even though Duan Lingtian who sat at the side didn't know what had happened, but he discerned some clues from the words the blue-clothed young man spoke. The young man was obviously slandering Zhang Shouyang. He knew Zhang Shouyang for more than a day or 2, so he naturally knew that it was impossible for Zhang Shouyang to say something like this. You yourself aren't a match for him, so you looked for another to help you at all costs. I don't know about everyone else, but you're surely trash. Duan Lingtian slowly raised his head to look at the blue-clothed young man before speaking indifferently. What did you say? The expression of the young man in blue clothes darkened, and he glared angrily at Duan Lingtian as the origin energy on his body raged. However, he didn't dare make a move, and his fearful gaze swept past Zhang Shouyang. He knew clearly in his heart that unless Zhang Shouyang was held up by the person by his side, otherwise, it was impossible for him to injure this violet-clothed young man that called him trash. So, even though he was enraged, he could only endure it for now. "Kid, I'll tear you to pieces." The blue-clothed young man's voice transmission that was filled with ruthlessness fiercely pierced into Duan Lingtian's ears. Duan Lingtian started laughing. "A 9th-level void initiation stage martial artist wants to tear me to pieces. You said you want to tear me to pieces." A ridiculing smile appeared on the corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth as he looked at the blue-clothed young man. "Then why aren't you making a move? Or perhaps, you're afraid of my big brother Zhang, so you didn't dare make a move until now. If it's like this, I can guarantee that big brother Zhang will absolutely not interfere if you make a move." Duan Lingtian's words directly exposed the blue-clothed young man's thoughts. 771 Chapter 772, Dongguo Clan. "You." The blue-clothed young man's face darkened, and then he ridiculed. "Kid, I never expected that you dared be so arrogant at such a young age, just a little kid like you dares to FC King challenge me." Slap. A clear slap instantly resounded out, and a crimson-red palm print had appeared on the face of the blue-clothed young man. "Watch your mouth." It was Duan Lingtian who'd left his seat and given the young man a slap before sitting back down. The blue-clothed young man only felt something flash before his eyes before he was struck by a slap, and he was utterly unable to react to it. You, the blue-clothed young man was angered to the point his eyes turned crimson red, yet even though he was angry to the limit, he utterly didn't dare make a move. He wasn't an idiot, and just the speed Duan Lingtian revealed earlier was far from something he could compare to. On the other hand, when the gaze of the thin young man that was glaring fiercely at Zhang Shouyang descended onto Duan Lingtian, it was filled with fear as well. "You have such a cultivation at your young age, I wonder if you've come here to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties." Duan Lingtian couldn't be bothered to reply when facing the thin young man's question, and he carried on calling over the attendant to order food. For a time, the expression of the thin young man was livid, yet he didn't flare up in the end. The terrifying speed Duan Lingtian revealed earlier had allowed him to faintly notice Duan Lingtian's terrifying cultivation, and he didn't have the slightest certainty of defeating Duan Lingtian. The thin young man took a deep breath before turning around and leaving, whereas, when he saw that even his backer had left, the blue-clothed young man hurriedly turned around and followed, as he was deeply afraid that Duan Lingtian and Zhang Shouyang would come get even with him. "Brother Lingtian, your cultivation." After the 2 young men of the Darchu dynasty left, Zhang Shouyang looked at Duan Lingtian with a stunned expression. Earlier, Duan Lingtian's speed was so swift that even he wasn't capable of seeing it completely clearly. 2nd level of the void interpretation stage. Duan Lingtian lightly smiled. 2nd level of the void interpretation stage. Zhang Shouyang was instantly dumbstruck. Only Feng Tianwu, who'd known about Duan Lingtian's breakthrough to the 2nd level of the void interpretation stage since long ago, wasn't surprised. "Even though I was mentally prepared long ago that your cultivation would sooner or later leave me far behind, I never imagined that you'd break through to the 2nd level of the void interpretation stage from the 9th level of the void initiation stage in one go." After he recovered from his shock, Zhang Shouyang couldn't help but sigh as Duan Lingtian's natural talent in the martial Dao caused him to feel powerless from the bottom of his heart. Even though he was considered to be a genius in the martial Dao amongst the younger generation of the Darkin dynasty, his little bit of natural talent was nothing before Duan Lingtian. After the 3 of them finished their meal, they came to a common view that they would randomly walk around the ancient desert city before returning to Skywolf Fort. "I heard long ago that gold and silver aren't circulated in the foreign lands, yet I never imagined it was true. Just this meal cost a low-grade origin stone, it's truly too wicked." Zhang Shouyang sighed emotionally when they walked out of the restaurant. Duan Lingtian smiled and didn't say anything further. If Big Brother Zhang were to go have a meal in the best restaurant at some of the flourishing cities at the center of Cloud Continent, he might curse. Even if it was the most ordinary meal, it would still cost a few mid-grade origin stones there. A slightly good meal would even cost high-grade origin stones. After they left the restaurant, the 3 of them started to stroll the streets of the ancient desert city, and they felt the air here was different from the Darkin dynasty. The spirit energy of the heavens and the earth seems to be much denser here. After a while, Zhang Shou couldn't help but exclaim with a light voice, and he seemed as if he'd noticed a new continent. Indeed, Feng Tianwu nodded as she felt the spirit energy in the heavens and the earth. Duan Lingtian didn't speak because he's noticed it long ago. Moreover, Duan Lingtian, who had fused with the memories of the rebirth martial emperor, wasn't surprised by this. In Cloud Continent, the closer one was to the central area of the continent, the denser the spirit energy of the heavens and the earth would be. Any place at the central area of Cloud Continent possessed a density of spirit energy that wasn't inferior to ordinary spirit points in the Darken Dynasty. All of this was because of the extremely rich amounts of origin stone veins in the central area of Cloud Continent. There were even many high-grade origin stone veins at that place, and they were controlled in the hands of some top powers in Cloud Continent. Those origin stone veins would emit extremely dense spirit energy of the heavens and the earth, and when they were converged together, it caused the spirit energy in the air in the central area of Cloud Continent to become extremely abundant. Hiss. Zhang Shouyang took a deep breath and casually held up the wine gourd at his waist before pouring a few mouthfuls down his throat, and then he let out a breath of air with a delighted expression on his face. Big brother Zhang really can't stay without wine. Feng Tianwu laughed. Go. Suddenly, Duan Lingtian heard a chilly and grim shout sound out from behind him. Subsequently, hurried sounds of horse hooves swept over towards them. Duan Lingtian's group of three couldn't help but turn around and look. They saw a Fergana horse galloping wildly on the street, and everywhere it passed, dust fluttered up into the skies and the people on the street moved to avoid it as they were deeply afraid they would be knocked by it. On the Fergana horse sat a young man. The young man was around 25 years of age, his white robe with golden edges fluttered in the wind, and the horsewhip in his hand flashed out like a spirit serpent dancing about. FCK off. Suddenly, the young man shouted out coldly. A woman who was with a child wasn't in time to avoid him and still stayed at the center of the street, and she had an expression of panic as she looked at the Fergana horse that galloped swiftly towards her. Swoosh! The horsewhip tore through the sky and fiercely whipped onto the woman's body, causing her coarse linen clothes to be split open, and her skin and flesh were torn open. The woman let out a shrill cry and was directly whipped flying before heavily falling on the side of the street, whereas, her child stood at the center of the street while looking at the Fergana horse that galloped swiftly over with an innocent gaze, and the child had completely not realized the arrival of danger. Watch out! A fiery red bolt of lightning flashed past, and it was Feng Tianwu who flashed out from Duan Lingtian's side to bring the child to the side of the street. Halt! Right at this moment, the young man that galloped his horse forward had instantly stopped the Fergana horse, and he raised his head to look at Feng Tianwu. Halt! Halt! Comma. At the same time, another few more Fergana horses followed the actions of the young man and stopped behind him. Obviously, they were his lackeys, and this indicated that the young man's background was extraordinary. In the ancient desert city, even the weakest power wasn't really weak. Moreover, since the young man dared commit violence while galloping his horse on the streets, the power behind him was obviously not simple, otherwise, how could he dare act like this? Nosy woman. After the young man saw Feng Tianwu's peerlessly good looks, his eyes emitted an expression of greed, and he continued to shout out coldly. Bring her back with us. This young master wants to properly discipline her. With a few words, he wanted to forcefully seize a civilian woman. The lackeys behind him seemed to have become accustomed to it since long ago, and they galloped their horses forward with the intention of capturing Feng Tianwu. Whirlwind. Duan Lingtian moved. Instantly, he chased up to the lackeys of the young man, and with a raise of his hand, a terrifying force swept out to directly throw them off their horses and cause them to emit waves of shrill cries. Kid, you actually dare poke your nose into my business. You're courting death. The young man instantly burst into rage when he saw someone meddling in his business, and he galloped his horse forward as the horsewhip in his hand seemed to have transformed into a bolt of lightning that whipped fiercely at Duan Lingtian. I think you're courting death. Meanwhile, Feng Tianwu who'd sent the child to the side of the injured woman flashed out as if she'd transformed into a bolt of lightning. In the next moment, she was already before Duan Lingtian, and with a casual raise of her hand, she'd grabbed a hold of the young man's horsewhip that whipped over. BTCH, you're courting death. The young man's gaze went cold as the horsewhip in his hand shook with the intention of retrieving his horsewhip from Feng Tianwu's hands. But unfortunately, no matter how much force he exerted, the other half of the horsewhip that was held by Feng Tianwu in her hand didn't move in the slightest. Committing violence with your horse, forcefully seizing civilian woman, a good-for-nothing son of the powerful like you deserves death. Feng Tianwu's beautiful eyes were suffused with coldness as her hand shook, causing the horsewhip to shake and instantly fly out and fiercely smashing onto the chest of the young man, and it blasted the young man off his horse. Ah! The young man let out a shrill cry as he fell onto the ground in a sorry state, and he crawled up after some time and stared hatefully at Feng Tianwu as he shouted angrily. All of you kill this B*TCH. If she doesn't die, then all of you will die. Instantly, the lackeys that were thrown off their horses by Duan Lingtian charged towards Feng Tianwu without any regard for their lives. Unfortunately, all of them suffered the same outcome. Before Feng Tianwu, who was a first-level void interpretation stage martial artist, even though they possessed an outstanding strength at the void initiation stage, they were easily stopped and blasted flying by Feng Tianwu. Bang, 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 comma. After a short while, the lackeys of the young man lay scattered across the surroundings of the young man, causing the young man's expression to go livid from anger. A group of useless trash. The young man cursed at his lackeys before looking at Feng Tianwu with a gaze that was suffused with cold lights. BTCH, you actually dared hit me, do you know who I am? I don't care who you are, you deserve death for committing violence and trying to forcefully seize civilian women. Feng Tianwu shouted out angrily and assumed a posture of launching another attack. Instantly, the young man was scared to the point his face went ashen, and he galloped his horse to flee swiftly, and he even disregarded his lackeys and arrived far in the distance in a short while. Just you wait, just you wait. The young man didn't forget the threatened Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu after he fled far away, and his voice that was filled with extreme coldness drifted over. I'll kill him. When she saw the young man didn't forget to threaten them, Feng Tianwu was instantly enraged, and she intended to chase after the young man. Tianwu. Duan Lingtian stopped Feng Tianwu and shook his head. Don't pursue a desperate foe. If he dares come looks for us once more, I'll be the first to kill him. Since he dares cause trouble in the ancient desert city, the power behind that fellow is probably not simple. Zhang Shouyang arrived by Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu's side, and he guessed. All of you should leave quickly, that person is the eldest young master of our ancient desert city's Dongguo clan, and he's the son the Dongguo clan's patriarch dotes upon the most. Since all of you have taught him a lesson, he won't be willing to let it go. After a while, some kind-hearted people couldn't help but advise them. Yes, leave quickly, many people advised. 772 Chapter 773, Dongguo Han's Revenge. I'm afraid it's already too late. Duan Lingtian's brows raised as he looked at the direction the young man left. At this moment, waves of ear-piercing howls of the wind sounded out and moved closer and closer from high above in the sky in that direction. Not long after, 5 flying demon beasts flew over, and in the blink of an eye, they arrived in the above Duan Lingtian's group of 3 before circling in the air in a threatening manner. Duan Lingtian's group of 3 raised their heads and saw that the young man who wore a white robe with golden edges from before was standing on the demon beast in the lead. His icy cold eyes were filled with ghastly killing intent as it flashed down to tightly lock onto Duan Lingtian's group of 3. It's them, the young man shouted out coldly as the origin energy on his body skyrocketed, and the demon beast beneath him started accumulating strength while waiting to attack as well. In the sky, ancient horned dragon silhouettes covered the skies as they coiled down with an imposing aura that shot into the sky like a rainbow. 9th level void initiation stage demon beasts. Duan Lingtian's brows raised as he never imagined that this young man, a mere 7th level void initiation stage martial artist, was actually capable of riding a demon beast that was 2 levels higher than himself. Looks like the Dongguo clan is really extraordinary. As soon as the young man finished speaking, the other 4 demon beasts gathered together with the demon beast beneath the young man, and the 5 9th level void initiation stage demon beasts glared coldly at Duan Lingtian's group of 3. They were waiting for the command of the young man before they would pounce down and spare no effort to battle Duan Lingtian's group of 3. Duan Lingtian didn't care about the 5 9th level void initiation stage demon beasts, and his gaze descended onto the backs of the 4 demon beasts. There were 4 middle-aged men with chilly expressions that stood respectively on one of the demon beasts, and all of the middle-aged men wore black clothes and were expressionless like 4 living zombies. Duan Lingtian's spiritual force stretched out to detect their cultivation in the first possible moment. They're all 4th level void interpretation stage martial artist. Duan Lingtian's couldn't help but gasp. Never had he imagined that the resources and reserves of the Dongguo clan behind the young man Feng Tianwu had taught a lesson to would actually be so formidable. Only 4 normal generals of the clan possessed a strength at the 4th level of the void interpretation stage. As for those top experts in the clan, it wasn't difficult to imagine, and it would surely be extremely terrifying. The people in the surroundings of Duan Lingtian's group of 3 had moved aside, and their eyes were filled with terror as they looked at the people on the 4 demon beasts in the sky. As far as they were concerned, these 3 kind-hearted young people were about to be struck with misfortune. The Dongguo clan was one of the 3 great clans of the ancient desert city, and amongst the various powers in the city, it was only inferior to the Skywolf fort that controlled ancient desert city. Of course, not to mention the ancient desert city, the Skywolf fort was considered to be an overlord even in the surrounding areas. If the Skywolf fort wanted to annihilate the 3 great clans of ancient desert city, it only had to send out a vice fort master to slaughter them completely. In the eyes of ordinary people, the 3 great clans of ancient desert city were extremely formidable. But in the eyes of Skywolf fort, they were like ants that couldn't withstand a single blow. The Skywolf fort was the overlord in this corner of the foreign lands. Even if all the experts of the 10 dynasties in the south moved out, and even the 3 great clans of the ancient desert city joined forces with them, it would be impossible for them to shake Skywolf fort in the slightest. Thus, the strength of Skywolf fort was obvious. However, even though the 3 great clans of ancient desert city were nothing before Skywolf fort, any one of these clans were existences that the 10 great dynasties in the south couldn't compare to. Once all the experts of any one of these clans were sent out, it would be sufficient to annihilate the 10 great dynasties. Clans in the foreign lands were absolutely not something the 10 dynasties could compare to. In ancient desert city, Skywolf fort occupied an area, and possessed an aloof status that was impossible to shake. However, it was precisely because of this that Skywolf fort very rarely interfered within the matters in ancient desert city. Everything in ancient desert city, like businesses and the mid-grade origin stone vein, were the shared responsibility of the 3 great clans and were controlled by them, whereas more than 90% of the benefits obtained by the 3 great clans in ancient desert city had to be handed over to Skywolf fort. If Skywolf fort was disregarded, the 3 great clans were the 3 overlords of ancient desert city that no one dare defend. While the tiger sleeps, the monkeys reign, it was nothing more than that. Today, the eldest young master of one of the 3 great clans, the Dongguo clan, had led the generals of the Dongguo clan with the intention of killing 3 young people, so no one felt that they would be able to survive. They'd seen similar scenes many times, whereas the outcome was more or less the same. Not a single one of those people that offended the Dongguo clan's eldest young master would be able to survive. As far as they were concerned, there would be no exception today as well. Thump! Suddenly, a figure flashed out, and it was the woman that had been whipped flying by the Dongguo clan's eldest young master earlier. She'd brought along her child to kneel on the floor. "Young Master Han, you're a great man that doesn't harbor grievance for past wrongs, so let them off." The woman spoke as she kowtowed to beg for mercy for Duan Lingtian's group of 3, and it wasn't long before her blood flowed from her head. "Kill this lowly commoner." Right when Duan Lingtian's group were shocked by the woman's actions and weren't able to react to it, Dongguo Han had shouted out coldly. **T. Duan Lingtian was the first to react, and his face went grim. But unfortunately, he was still too late. That Dongguo clan general that stood on the demon beast attacked instantly, and his vast palm print enveloped down to directly blast apart the woman and her child, causing blood to taint the ground. The terrifying palm print descended onto the ground and caused numerous hideous cracks to appear on the ground, and these cracks were dense and crisscrossed together like a spider's web. Damn it! The scene before him caused Duan Lingtian to be stunned. After a short moment, his eyes were suffused with crimson red as he stared fixedly at Dongguo Han, and he wished for nothing more than to burn Dongguo Han's bones and scatter the ashes. "I'll kill you!" Feng Tianwu was enraged, and her beautiful face went ominous. Billowing flames skyrocketed on her, and she seemed to have transformed into a ball of flames that swept towards Dongguo Han. Never had she imagined that the mother of the child she'd saved would kowtow and beg for forgiveness for their sake. What's more, she never imagined that Dongguo Han would actually directly command the generals under him to kill the mother and child. That child was only 4 or 5 years old, and hadn't even had the chance to properly see the world before being killed. Feng Tianwu's rage at the moment could almost set a prairie ablaze. "He doesn't even let a woman and child off, animal." Zhang Shouyang's face went cold as ghastly flames of rage leapt about in his eyes, and then he stomped on the ground and seemed to have transformed into a bolt of lightning that moved to help Feng Tianwu. No matter if it was Feng Tianwu or Zhang Shouyang, they didn't know the terrifying strength of the 4 generals that Dongguo Han had brought along. But even if they did know about it, they wouldn't shrink back. Bang! One of the 4 generals by Dongguo Han's side struck out, causing a terrifying force to sweep over and instantly blast Feng Tianwu and Zhang Shouyang back. The two of them descended by Duan Ling Tian's side in a sorry state, and their eyes were filled with astonishment as they looked at the ancient horned dragon silhouettes that covered the sky. Fourth level of the void interpretation stage. Ha ha ha, Dong Guohan laughed arrogantly when he saw the expression of Feng Tianwu and Zhang Shouyang. Weren't all of you arrogant? Didn't all of you want to poke your noses in this young master's business? Come on, do it. How is it? Have all of you started to feel regret and fear in your hearts now? Dong Guohan stood on the demon beast and was surrounded by the four fourth-level void interpretation stage generals, causing him to seem supreme as he looked down at Duan Ling Tian's group of three. Feng Tianwu and Zhang Shouyang didn't speak but only stared coldly and indifferently at Dong Guohan. Regret, fear, Duan Ling Tian, who hadn't made a move besides teaching a lesson to those lackeys of Dong Guohan, glanced indifferently at Dong Guohan. I've never known what regret and fear is. If you really want to speak about regret, I only regret I didn't chase up to you and cripple you earlier. As he finished speaking, Duan Ling Tian's voice became slightly colder. Whoosh! Duan Ling Tian's words stunned the crowd of spectators. Is this young man courting death? With a quick thought, they came to an understanding. Based on the current situation, even if this young man begged for forgiveness, it would probably be impossible for him to survive with the temper of the Dongguo clan's eldest young master. Presently, his best choice is to protect his dignity before death. To rather die standing than live on his knees. Good, good. Dong Guohan's expression was livid when he heard Duan Ling Tian, and he laughed out of extreme rage. Never had he imagined that even at a time like this violet-clothed young man actually still dared talk to him like this, and it was simply an act of courting death. Suddenly, Dong Guohan's eyes emitted cold lights as he directly commanded. Don't kill this woman, I want to bring her home and play with her properly. As for the other two men, kill them directly. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. At practically the instant Dong Guohan commanded, the other four demon beasts plunged towards Duan Ling Tian's group of three as pairs of sharp claws that flickered with cold lights struck towards the heads of Duan Ling Tian and Zhan Shouyang. As for the four fourth-level void interpretation stage generals on the demon beasts, one of them had locked onto Feng Tianwu, while the other three had instead locked onto Duan Ling Tian and Zhang Shouyang. Let's retreat, Feng Tianwu shouted out in a light voice. After she called out to Duan Ling Tian and Zhang Shouyang, a crystalline and translucent pearl had appeared in her hand, and it was precisely that pearl that had been inscribed with a detection inscription. So long as she crushed it, her father, Feng Wudao, would notice it at the first possible moment and rush over. Tianwu, but Duan Ling Tian had instead stopped Feng Tianwu and shook his head at her. Subsequently, under Feng Tianwu's dumbstruck gaze, Duan Ling Tian flashed out without the slightest bit of fear to greet the demon beasts that plunged down, and he faced the four fourth-level void interpretation stage experts head-on. Big brother Duan. Feng Tianwu's face went pale, and she didn't listen to Duan Ling Tian and crushed the pearl in her hand without the slightest hesitation. Even though this pearl was precious, yet it was far inferior to Duan Ling Tian's life in her eyes. At this moment, her heart burned with anxiety, and she only hoped her father would be able to rush over as soon as possible. No. Meanwhile, Feng Tianwu saw Duan Ling Tian was about to pass the four demon beasts, causing his beautiful face to be unable to refrain from revealing fear. Without the slightest hesitation, Feng Tianwu soared into the sky without the slightest bit of fear to chase towards Duan Ling Tian. At this moment, she disregarded her life. 773. Chapter 774, Dong Guohan's death. When Duan Ling Tian faced a dangerous situation, Feng Tianwu's mind went completely blank and she only knew that nothing could happen to Duan Ling Tian. That feeling seemed as if she was about to lose the thing most important to her. It was an awful and oppressive feeling. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. The sharp claws of the four enormous demon beasts tore through the sky and fiercely clawed towards Duan Ling Tian, who charged up towards them, and the depths of their eyes were filled with heartfelt disdain. As far as they were concerned, a human martial artist that was so young daring to be so arrogant before them was simply an act of courting death. The four fourth-level void interpretation stage generals on the four demon beasts looked with contempt at Duan Ling Tian, who charged towards them now. Kill him, Dong Guohan shouted out explosively from high above in the sky. Yes, eldest young master. Instantly, the four Dongguo clan generals flew out as if they'd transformed into four eagles that flashed menacingly towards Duan Ling Tian. You're courting death, Duan Lingtian's gaze went slightly cold as a wisp of disdain suffused the corners of his mouth, and then a dim light flashed into appearance in the depths of his eyes. Along with his cultivation advancing to the second level of the void interpretation stage, his spiritual force that had advanced to the fourth level of the void interpretation stage with his cultivation had instantly gushed into the soul brand in the depths of his soul, and he directly activated his soul skill. Thousand illusions. Instantly, an illusory space appeared out of thin air, and it expanded ceaselessly to directly envelop the 4 9th-level void initiation stage demon beasts that were approaching menacingly and the 4 Dongguo clan generals. When the attacks of the 4 Dongguo clan generals were about to descend onto Duan Lingtian, they instantly seemed to have lost their target, and they turned around. Subsequently, their eyes flickered with a fierce light as they each pounced towards the demon beasts that had carried them over. The eyes of the 4 demon beasts emitted fierce lights now as well, and they seemed as if they'd seen Duan Lingtian when facing the 4 4th-level void interpretation stage martial artists that pounced towards them, and they directly pounced over as well. Bang! In a single move, one of the demon beasts was killed by a Dongguo clan general. Bang! 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 Subsequently, the other 3 demon beasts were killed by the other 3 generals. The 4 4th-level void interpretation stage generals of the Dongguo clan killed the 4 9th-level void initiation stage demon beasts as simply as if they were killing chickens or cutting grass. The demon beasts didn't have the slightest ability to resist when facing the generals, and they were like lamb waiting to be slaughtered or fish on a chopping block and couldn't resist a single blow. Duan Lingtian stopped in mid-air and looked coldly at the scene before his eyes, and it was as if everything that occurred before him wasn't the slightest bit related to him. Whoosh! Meanwhile, Feng Wudao arrived by Duan Lingtian's side, and the scene before her eyes caused her to be astounded as well. What are all of you doing? High above in the sky, Dongguo Han's face went grim as he shouted out with rage. Everything before his eyes caused his scalp to go numb. Have these 4 generals gone mad? They actually launched a slaughter towards the demon beasts on our side. The surrounding crowd of spectators were in an uproar as well. What are they doing? Aren't they members of the Dongguo clan? Why are they attacking the demon beasts of their own clan? Have they gone mad? And they've even gone mad at the same time. Everyone felt shocked and puzzled. But in the next moment, something that caused them to feel even more puzzled had appeared, and it caused their pupils to be unable to help but constrict. Heavens! What have we seen? They saw the 4 Dongguo clan generals that had just struck out to kill the 4 demon beasts actually had no intention of stopping after killing a demon beast each. The origin energy on their bodies skyrocketed as their void interpretation concept fused into their origin energy and caused it to completely materialize. Subsequently, they pounced towards their former companions and launched a bloody battle. A chaotic battle started at this moment. Bang! 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 The 4 Dongguo clan generals seemed as if they'd gone mad as they attacked each other ferociously. After a short moment, all 4 of them had suffered a heavy injury. Even then, they still fought each other desperately, and it was as if they wouldn't stop until they killed each other. Everyone including Feng Tianwu and Zhang Shouyang was dumbstruck. Stop! Stop! Presently, Dongguo Han who stood on the last demon beast that was shivering had an extremely unsightly expression, and he roared ceaselessly at the 4 generals as if he wanted to wake them up. Why is it like this? Can anyone tell me what the FCK is going on? Dongguo Han's expression was extremely unsightly as he utterly did not know what was going on and why the 4 generals of his Dongguo clan would kill each other. Could it be that they've all gone mad? In next to no time, Dongguo Han's expression went pale. Because Duan Lingtian had already appeared before him and was looking at him with a calm expression and said indifferently, "You're the Dongguo clan's eldest young master. Kill him." Dongguo Han shouted out explosively as he urged the demon beast beneath him to make it attack and kill Duan Lingtian. But unfortunately, the demon beast had just pounced out when it was killed by the 3-foot-long blade Duan Lingtian condensed with his origin energy. Since the beginning until the end, he only spent the time for a single move. The demon beast died and plunged to the ground, whereas, Dongguo Han had been dumbstruck instead, and he stared blankly at Duan Lingtian and said with slight disbelief, "You're actually a void interpretation stage martial artist." Obviously, he only truly felt Duan Lingtian's true strength that far surpassed him at this moment. "Now it's your turn." Duan Lingtian looked at Dongguo Han with a calm expression, and his eyes didn't contain any emotion. You dare kill me? Let me tell you, no matter who you are, no matter where you go, you're dead if you dare kill me. Let me tell you, My grandfather is." After Dongguo Han heard Duan Lingtian's words, his expression went ghastly pale and he threatened Duan Lingtian. But unfortunately, his words couldn't be finished. Because the sword in Duan Lingtian's hand had already penetrated his throat and covered the sky with beautiful and resplendent blood that sprayed into the sky and condensed into numerous, red roses. Whoosh! Right at the instant Duan Lingtian killed Dongguo Han, a figure appeared out of thin air in the nearby sky. The person that had arrived was completely stunned when he saw the scene before him. "This is Father." Feng Tianwu flew out to arrive by the person's side. "Wu, you used the detection pearl I left you to let me watch the show." Feng Wudao couldn't help but laugh bitterly as he looked at the fight before him that was coming to an end. Feng Tianwu couldn't help but laugh bitterly as well. "I never imagined that Big Brother Duan would actually be able to deal with these people as well. Those 4 people are all existences at the 4th level of the void interpretation stage." Feng Tianwu spoke as she looked at the 4 Dongguo clan generals who were battling each other. The 4 generals were heavily injured yet still fought ceaselessly and were completely immersed in the battle to the point they'd lost all reason. "Let's go." Duan Lingtian nodded to Zhang Shouyang before moving to arrive by Feng Wudao and Feng Tianwu's side. Subsequently, the 4 of them left directly and returned to Skywolf Fort. On the way, Zhang Shouyang couldn't help but turn to look at Duan Lingtian, and he couldn't help but be shocked in his heart when he thought of the scene from before. Brother Lingtian is actually so formidable now. Even 4 4th-level void interpretation stage martial artists were instigated by him to the point of fighting each other. On the other hand, Duan Lingtian heaved a sigh of relief instead. Fortunately, those 4 fellows weren't inscription masters. Otherwise, the illusory space constructed by my soul skill would be utterly incapable of affecting them. Duan Lingtian felt fortunate in his heart. "Wu, what exactly happened?" Feng Wudao couldn't help but ask Feng Tianwu as when he arrived earlier, everything had already ended. It was precisely because of this that he hadn't had the chance to understand what had happened. "It's nothing." Feng Tianwu shook her head. "We just killed a good-for-nothing young man from a powerful clan. That young man even killed a weak woman and child, and his crimes deserved death." As she finished speaking, Feng Tianwu revealed an enraged expression as if she recalled the scene from before again. At that time, if it wasn't for the woman having brought along her child to plead on their behalf, she wouldn't have been killed, and this caused Feng Tianwu's heart to be filled with guilt. When he sensed the atmosphere seemed to be slightly heavy, Feng Wudao didn't ask any further, yet the depths of his eyes contained slight fear. A good-for-nothing young man from a powerful clan. This place wasn't the Darkin dynasty. Even though the ancient desert city was situated at the borders of the foreign lands, it belonged to the foreign lands at any rate, and the experts within it was numerous like the clouds. Even if it was an ordinary power, it possessed an extremely formidable strength. Moreover, the power behind a good-for-nothing young man like that was probably not simple. But when he thought about how they would be staying in Skywolf Fort in the near future, he felt relieved in his heart. No matter how strong a power of the ancient desert city was, it was only a dependent of Skywolf Fort, and it would absolutely not dare rashly cause trouble in Skywolf Fort. So he felt relieved. Of course, this was also because Feng Wudao didn't know that the person who'd died earlier was the eldest young master of one of the 3 great clans of the ancient desert city, the Dongguo clan. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so composed. Perhaps ordinary disciples of the Dongguo clan wouldn't dare march directly into the Skywolf Fort to take revenge, but their patriarch was able to get in touch with the higher-ups of Skywolf Fort. Along with Duan Lingtian's departure, the illusory space constructed from his soul skill naturally dispersed as well. At the same time, those 4 Dongguo clan generals that were dragging along their heavily injured and dismembered bodies to fight each other had finally escaped from the illusory space. With a single glance, they saw each other who was heavily injured. "All of you, what's going on? How did all of you get so seriously injured as well? I truly never imagined that kid was actually so terrifying. Something seems to be off." Unconsciously, the gazes of the 4 Dongguo clan generals first descended onto the 5 enormous corpses of the demon beasts before descending onto a human corpse. When they saw this corpse, their pupils constricted instantly, and they couldn't help but shout out in shock. "Eldest young master." Subsequently, all 4 of them glanced at each other and saw terror in each other's eyes. "If the patriarch finds out that the eldest young master was killed under our protection, yet we're still alive, we're dead for sure. Quickly, let's consume medicinal pills to heal our injuries before leaving far away from ancient desert city." 774. Chapter 775, Dongguo Lei. Under the astounded gazes of the surrounding crowd of spectators, the 4 generals of the Dongguo clan left directly after consuming healing medicinal pills. The direction they left towards wasn't the direction of the Dongguo clan. Presently, they only had a single thought in their mind, and it was to leave as far as possible and never return to ancient desert city. Only in this way would they be able to avoid the pursuit of the Dongguo clan. However, even though the 4 generals of the Dongguo clan had fled, the news of the Dongguo clan's eldest young master being killed was still sent back to the Dongguo clan. The Dongguo clan, one of the 3 great clans of ancient desert city that controlled a portion of the city. At this moment, at the vast lake within the Dongguo clan estate, an old man sat silently at the side of a pergola at the center of the lake, and he held a fishing rod and was fishing. Even though the old man was fishing, yet his eyes were closed tightly and he seemed to be extremely relaxed. This old man looked to be no different than an ordinary old man. Suddenly, the old man opened his eyes and a bright light flashed past within. Swoosh! At the same time, the old man's hand that held the fishing rod shook and directly pulled it up, and an enormous fish was pulled up and just happened to be tossed into the nearby bamboo basket. If someone was here and saw the hook on the old man's fishing rod, they would surely be extremely shocked. Because, this fishing hook was actually straight. If Duan Lingtian was here and saw this scene, he would surely be unable to help but recall the legend of Grand Duke Zhong fishing that was passed down since ancient times in the earth of his previous life. 1. Fishing like Grand Duke Zhong, allowing a fish to be readily caught. The fish hook of Grand Duke Zhong was a straight hook. I've finally hooked one, Han will get to enjoy nice food today. The old man smiled lightly as he muttered, and as he said the word Han, his muddy eyes seemed to reveal dense affection. His entire life was filled with troubles, his son had died early and only left behind a single grandson, and it could be said to be a single line of inheritance. It was precisely because of this that he doted on and loved that grandson of his, and he wished for nothing more than to give all the best things in the entire world to that boy. It was also exactly because of this grandson that he'd always been forcibly occupying the place of patriarch in the Dongguo clan, because he intended to pass on this position to his grandson in the future. He'd placed his greatest expectations onto his grandson, whereas his grandson didn't disappoint him. Even though his grandson was slightly spoiled, his natural talent and comprehension ability wasn't bad. As for the part of being spoiler, he didn't mind because everyone had a time that they were young and arrogant. Moreover, he had the ability to allow his grandson to act like this in ancient desert city, and he wasn't the slightest bit worried that someone would dare offend his grandson. Suddenly, the old man frowned as he saw a figure was dashing towards the pergola at the center of the lake in panic. Didn't I say that I don't like people disturbing me while I'm fishing? The old man's face sank, and as he spoke, an extremely formidable aura was emitted from his body before enveloping the person's body and pressing down onto the person to the point the person couldn't help but bend down. The person that had come was an old woman and was precisely the manager of the Dongguo clan. Presently, she had an extremely unsightly expression and was slightly hesitant to speak. The old man's face sank when he saw the old woman's expression. This old man had served the Dongguo clan for her entire lifetime, and he knew the old woman extremely well. If it wasn't for the occurrence of a terrible major event, it was impossible for the old woman to lose her composure. What, has something major happened? The old man asked. The old woman took a deep breath when she heard the old man, and she said with a trembling voice, Patriarch, eldest young master has. What happened to the eldest young master? The aura on the old man instantly strengthened and pressed onto the old woman, causing her to break out in cold sweat and shiver. The old man's gaze was like a sword that seemed to penetrate the old woman's body. Patriarch, you have my condolences. Finally, the old woman caught her breath and spoke while having her head lowered. Condolences. The old man's body trembled when he heard the old woman. Instantly, an extremely terrifying aura was emitted from the old man. In the next moment, gusts of terrifying gales arose abruptly in the surroundings of the pergola, and the gale moved faster and faster to finally transform into numerous material blades of wind in the end. Swish, 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 the old man's rage caused blades of wind to sweep out and instantly mince the entire pergola into pieces that crashed down into the vast lake. The entire pergola on the lake had instantly ceased to exist. Not only that, the water in the entire lake at this moment was enveloped by numerous gusts of terrifying violent winds that continued to sweep out as if they'd transformed into numerous roaring water dragons. At this moment, only the old man and old woman weren't affected by this. The old woman had her head lowered and didn't dare speak a word. She deeply felt the monstrous rage of the patriarch, and she didn't doubt in the slightest that if she dared speak at this moment, she would very likely become the person the patriarch vented his rage on. "Lead the way," the old man shouted out coldly, and with a raise of his hand, he brought along the old woman to vanish in the sky above the vast lake. Meanwhile, the lake water that surged in the lake had once again returned to calm. Who did it? Many Dongguo clan higher-ups were gathered in the audience hall of the Dongguo clan, and when they saw the old man roaring as he charged in, they couldn't help but sigh. Han, the old man stood by the side of the corpse that lay on the ground, and his eyes flickered with a fierce light as he looked at the corpse that was pierced through the throat by a sword. "Don't tell me that all of you haven't found out who did it." The old man's words were filled with extremely icy coldness that caused everyone present to be unable to help but shiver. "Patriarch, he's one of the eyewitnesses." In next to no time, the old woman that followed in behind the patriarch brought along a young man who carried a modest posture and spoke to the old man. The old man's gaze that was like swords descended onto the young man when he heard this, and his aura swept out right after. Bang! The young man's face instantly flushed red when from being enveloped by the old man's aura, and then he fell collapsed on the ground and spat out a mouthful of blood as he looked at the old man with a terrified expression. "Speak." The old man's icy cold voice was filled with killing intent, causing the young man to feel as if he'd fallen into a pit of ice, and he didn't dare hesitate to hurriedly speak about the scenes he'd saw not long ago. At the beginning, young Master Han galloped on his horse and whipped a woman flying with his horsewhip. The woman's child stood on the street and was about to die under the hooves of the horse. At this moment, a red-clothed woman made a move to save that child. After that, young Master Han. Quote, quote. The young man was exactly one of the people that had passed by and witnessed the entire course of events today, and he spoke of the scenes he saw without missing the slightest detail. Whoosh! Along with the young man finishing speaking, a terrifying aura gushed out from the old man and pressed down onto the Dongguo clan higher-ups present to the point they couldn't help but take a few steps back. As for the young man, he was directly blasted flying, and his head collided onto a pillar in the audience hall, depriving him of his life. Perhaps even the young man himself had never imagined that he would die so unjustly. After all, the reason he'd come to inform the Dongguo clan was precisely for the sake of the Dongguo clan's reward, yet now, he hadn't even obtained the reward he ought to have obtained, but he'd already died unjustly. Good, very good, he even dares kill the grandson of Dongguo Lei. It looks like that violet-clothed kid is getting tired of living. The voice of the old man, the patriarch of the Dongguo clan, Dongguo Lei, was like a thunderclap as it spread out, causing the eardrums of some of the Dongguo clan higher-ups with comparatively lower cultivations to tremble, and their faces went pale. "Grand Elder, I'll give you a day of time, I want to see the heads of those 4 traitors by then." Dongguo Lei looked at a gray-haired old man and spoke with a low voice. "Yes, Patriarch," the old man replied respectfully before turning around and transforming into a bolt of lightning that left to go carry out his work. The remaining people, subsequently, Dongguo Lei looked towards the remaining Dongguo clan higher-ups, and his eyes flickered with killing intent. "All of your missions are to investigate the identity of the violet-clothed kid that killed my grandson. Once you find out about his location, bring him back. I want him alive. As for his 3 companions, directly kill them. The first person to find out the identity of the violet-clothed kid will obtain 1,000 mid-grade origin stones. The person that brings the violet-clothed kid back can obtain 10,000 mid-grade origin stones. Besides that, anyone who brings the head of any one of the companions of that violet-clothed kid will obtain 1,000 mid-grade origin stones." Dongguo Lei issues the internal rewards of the Dongguo clan, and this was sufficient to show how urgently he wanted to take revenge for his grandson. "Yes." The gazes of everyone lit up as they replied respectfully, and then left impatiently. Everyone hoped to be able to obtain the rewards promised by the patriarch. The person that brought the violet-clothed kid back could obtain 10,000 mid-grade origin stones. Even if it was the Dongguo clan's 2nd elder, 3rd elder, and other elders with lofty status, 10,000 mid-grade origin stones were something they similarly were anxious to obtain. Along with Dongguo Lei issuing his orders, the entire Dongguo clan was mobilized. The entire ancient desert city had gone completely mad. Yet the person concerned, Duan Lingtian, was silently staying within the Narcissus Pavilion of Skywolf Fort and cultivating with great efforts. 9 Dragons War Sovereign Technique, Sword Dragon Form. As the overbearing medicinal strength of the rebirth pill spread out in his body, Duan Lingtian's origin energy advanced at an extremely terrifying speed, and this speed was sufficient to cause any martial artist in Cloud Continent to perspire from embarrassment and even feel a sense of inferiority. According to this speed, I ought to be able to smoothly break through to the third level of the void interpretation stage in another 2 or 3 months at most. As he felt the swift advancement of his origin energy, Duan Lingtian thought in his heart. Along with the advancement of my origin energy, the advanced sword force seems to be almost at the time of transformation. There are another 3 days before the martial competition of the 10 dynasties begins. Duan Lingtian continued to cultivate for the sake of achieving sword concept. Finally, another day passed. On this day, Duan Lingtian awoke from his cultivation, and when he opened his eyes, it faintly seemed as if a sword light that was filled with a sharp and fierce aura flashed within his eyes. Swish! With a raise of his hand, Duan Lingtian's origin energy condensed into a sword, and strands of fierce aura leapt about on the sword and emitted a wave of light sword howls. At the same time, another ancient horned dragon silhouette appeared out of thin air beside the existing 30 ancient horned dragon silhouettes. First level elementary sword concept. 775 Chapter 776, 9 Dragons Radiant Flash. I can finally cultivate the 9 Dragons Radiant Flash. Duan Lingtian revealed a smile, and with a raise of his hand, the 3-foot-long blade that was condensed into form from origin energy shook suddenly. For a time, besides containing strands of sharp and fierce aura, there were strands of deep azure-colored energy, and violet-colored energy, and earthen yellow-colored energy was mixed within it. The deep azure-colored energy seemed as if it was assisted by the gods, and it fused into one with the 3-foot-long blade that was condensed from origin energy, causing the milky white-colored 3-foot-long blade to gradually become a true 3-foot-long blade that revealed an azure color. Presently, Duan Lingtian seemed as if he was holding a 3-foot-long blade that was condensed into form from actual wind. Materialization of concept. The 3-foot-long blade itself contained Duan Lingtian's origin energy and first-level intermediate wind concept, and it emitted the sharp and fierce aura of the first-level intermediate sword concept. Besides that, 4th-level elementary lightning concept and 1st-level elementary earth concept were coiled in the surroundings of the blade. Whoosh! The energy of the heavens and the earth roiled in the sky above Duan Lingtian and converged to form phenomenon of the heavens and the ears. The first 30 ancient horned dragon silhouettes that appeared belonged to Duan Lingtian's origin energy. After that, another 20 ancient horned dragon silhouettes appeared, and these drawn from his first-level intermediate concept. Finally, another 4 ancient horned dragon silhouettes, 1 ancient horned dragon silhouette, and 1 more ancient horned dragon silhouettes appeared. They respectively belonged to the 4th-level elementary lightning concept, 1st-level elementary earth concept, and the 1st-level elementary sword concept. A total of 56 ancient horned dragon silhouettes. The strength of 56 ancient horned dragons was the strongest force Duan Lingtian could exert without utilizing a spirit weapon. Once he utilized a spirit weapon, his strength would be even stronger. Of course, it could only amplify his origin energy, the strength of 30 ancient horned dragons. If he fought with the quasi-royal grade spirit sword or the Devilseal tablet, it could amplify strength by 100% and provide the strength of 30 ancient horned dragons. If he fought with a grade 3 spirit sword, it could amplify strength by another 70% and provide a strength of 21 ancient horned dragons. I'm surely unable to utilize the quasi-royal grade spirit sword during the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. I can utilize the Devilseal tablet, but the precondition is that I can't expose its amplification ability. Duan Lingtian's gaze flashed as he thought in his heart. What a joke! No matter if it was the quasi-royal grade spirit sword or the Devilseal tablet, both of them were existences that could provide an amplification of 100%. Once they were exposed, he would surely become the target of all. Perhaps even the members of Skywolf Fort would arouse feelings of greed in their hearts. Duan Lingtian knew his own limitations. The current him didn't have the strength to defend the quasi-royal grade spirit sword and the Devilseal tablet. Besides that, the grade 1 spirit sword he obtained in the Sword Monarch's treasure that day couldn't be utilized either. This was only the border of the foreign lands, and not to mention a grade 1 spirit sword, there might not even be a grade 2 spirit sword. The spirit weapons possessed by the young geniuses that are participating in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties will at most be a grade 3 spirit weapon, so besides being unable to utilize the quasi-royal grade spirit sword, the Devilseal tablet, and the grade 1 spirit sword, I can't use a grade 2 spirit sword either. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart. After Duan Lingtian broke through to the void interpretation stage, his origin energy had undergone a tremendous change when compared with his origin energy at the void initiation stage. At the same time that his origin energy had transformed, he could condense a stronger weapon flame as well. In the past, Duan Lingtian could only condense a grade 3 weapon flame, a violet copper weapon flame. Now, Duan Lingtian was already capable of condensing a grade 2 weapon flame, a violet silver weapon flame. Relying on the lifetime's worth of weapons refinement experience and technique of the rebirth martial emperor, he could easily refine a grade 2 spirit weapon. While he was still in the Darkened Dynasty, Duan Lingtian had already more or less gathered all the materials required to refine a grade 2 spirit weapon. Whoosh, 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 with a raise of his hand, Duan Lingtian withdrew a large pile of materials and intended to start refining. Hiss. A strand of violet-colored flames abruptly shot out from the center of Duan Lingtian's palm, and there were strands of silver edges coiled around its surroundings, causing it to seem extremely gorgeous. Subsequently, Duan Lingtian started smelting the pile of materials, and profound weapons refinement techniques came readily to him. After around 3 hours passed, a jade-green flexible sword that was thin as a cicada's wing appeared in his hand, and its design was extremely similar to the violet myrtle flexible sword. The origin energy on Duan Lingtian's hand flickered, causing the jade-green flexible sword to instantly straighten. Along with his origin energy fusing into it, the energy of the heavens and the earth roiled into the sky above him to first form into 30 ancient horned dragon silhouettes before another 24 ancient horned dragon silhouettes appeared. An amplification of 80%, not bad. Duan Lingtian put away the grade 2 spirit sword in his spatial ring with satisfaction, and then he opened his room door and left. He arrived at the balcony of the pavilion and sat there catching some fresh air silently. Duan Lingtian's gaze flickered as he looked at Skywolf Fort that occupied an extremely vast and spacious area. All along the way to this point since walking out of Freshbreeze Town, he'd unknowingly grown to such a height from an ignorant youth, and he was even about to represent the Darkened Dynasty to compete with the young geniuses of the other 9 dynasties. In a flash, I've already arrived in this world for over 10 years. Duan Lingtian sighed in his heart. After being here for more than 10 years, he'd already completely fused into this world, and everything of the earth in his previous life had become an eternal memory. He was already not the cold and merciless king of weapons specialist from all those years ago, and he was instead a true genius martial artist of Cloud Continent. 9 Dragons Radiant Flash. Duan Lingtian's eyes flashed as he started to search through the memories of the rebirth martial emperor, and the records related to the high-grade heaven rank offensive martial skill, 9 Dragons Radiant Flash, that was within the sword dragon form appeared in Duan Lingtian's mind. The 9 Dragons Radiant Flash was powered by sword concept and could be executed together with other concepts. When cultivated to the limit, it could develop 9 divine dragons. 9 dragons striking in unison in an ultimate flash. This was the perfection stage of the 9 Dragons Radiant Flash. Like Earth rank martial skills, Heaven rank martial skills were divided into the rudiment stage, initial stage, mastery stage, and perfection stage as well. When 1 divine dragon could be formed when the 9 Dragons Radiant Flash was executed, it was considered to be at the rudiment stage. When 3 divine dragons could be formed, it was at the initial stage. When 5 divine dragons could be formed, it was at the mastery stage. When 9 divine dragons could be formed, it was at the perfection stage. The 9 Dragons Radiant Flash was formed by the Rebirth Martial Emperor from combining 2 Heaven rank offensive martial skills. The Rebirth Martial Emperor had cultivated both those high-grade Heaven rank martial skills to the perfection stage. Duan Lingtian muttered to himself as he searched swiftly through the memories of the Rebirth Martial Emperor. A Heaven rank martial skills is different from the martial skills of cultivated in the past. Heaven rank martial skills rely more on comprehension ability and experience. I have to rely on myself in terms of comprehension, but I can absorb the Rebirth Martial Emperor's experience. Even though he didn't cultivate the 9 Dragons Radiant Flash, yet he'd cultivated the 2 types of martial skills that formed the 9 Dragons Radiant Flash. As the saying goes, all roads lead to the same destination. Subsequently, Duan Lingtian started cultivating the 9 Dragons Radiant Flash, and he quickly found the feeling of it. Of course, all of this was because of the Rebirth Martial Emperor's experience. Swoosh. 1 hour later, Duan Lingtian pointed out his fingers that were formed into a sword with a raise of his hand. Instantly, his origin energy faintly condensed into a divine dragon that bared its fangs and brandished its claws as it pounced out. It tore through the sky and caused the air to be compressed, and a wave of ear-piercing sounds of the air exploding resounded out. All of this wasn't the end. Flash! Duan Lingtian's eyes flashed, and the eyes of the divine dragon instantly shot out two material flashes that whistled out under Duan Lingtian's guidance to pierce into an enormous rock outside Narcissus Pavilion. Instantly, two bottomless holes appeared on the enormous rock, and the flashes that entered it easily had vanished without a trace. Whoosh! Duan Lingtian's figure flashed out to arrive at the side of the enormous rock before casually pushing the enormous rock aside. Rumble! After the enormous rock was pushed aside, Duan Lingtian saw two bottomless holes on the ground, and his spiritual force couldn't help but stretch out with the intention of finding out its depth. Duan Lingtian's spiritual force stretched out along the two little holes for 15 minutes, yet didn't notice its bottom. As expected of a high-grade heaven-rank offensive martial skill, what a strong might! Duan Lingtian's gaze lit up. A divine dragon is capable of instantly shooting out two flashes. Wouldn't 9 divine dragons be capable of instantly shooting out 18 feet flashes? Duan Lingtian couldn't help but gasp when he thought up to here. He'd clearly seen the might and speed of the flashes. Even if he executed a high-grade earth-rank martial skill with a similar strength and condensed his origin energy into form to attack, it would be far inferior in terms of speed to the flash shot out from the eyes of the divine dragon formed from the 9 dragons' radiant flash. The two flashes from before were too fast and too overbearing. A heaven-rank offensive martial skill. Suddenly, a slightly astounded voice entered into Duan Lingtian's ears. Suddenly, Feng Wudao had appeared on the balcony of the pavilion, and he was looking at Duan Lingtian with a shocked gaze. Uncle Feng. After pushing the enormous rock back to its original place, Duan Lingtian flew out and descended by Feng Wudao's side. I originally intended to choose a heaven-rank martial skill suitable for intermediate wind concept for you. Now it would seem like it was unnecessary. The heaven-rank martial skill you executed earlier is probably a mid-grade heaven-rank offensive martial skill, right? As he finished speaking, the gaze he looked at Duan Lingtian with burned with anticipation. A heaven-rank martial skill was extremely difficult to come by. Even if it was the Darken Dynasty's Feng clan he was from, there were only a few low-grade heaven-rank martial skills, whereas, because he wandered about the world throughout the years, he'd gathered many heaven-rank martial skills. But they were all low-grade heaven-rank martial skills. According to his knowledge, even the Darken Dynasty's imperial family didn't possess a mid-grade heaven-rank martial skill, yet never had he imagined that he could see one in Duan Lingtian's possession. Duan Lingtian couldn't help but be stunned when he heard Feng Wudao. The 9 dragons' radiant flash he executed earlier wasn't a mid-grade heaven-rank martial skill but a high-grade heaven-rank martial skill. In the end, he nodded and didn't reveal the truth. 776 Chapter 777, Zishang's Scheme. An unexpected guest arrived in the Dongguo clan estate today. In the audience hall, the Dongguo clan's second elder, Dongguo Zong looked at the white-clothed young man before him and asked directly. I heard from my subordinates that you know where the person that killed my Dongguo clan's young master is. The white-clothed young man glanced indifferently at Dongguo Zong. You're the second elder of the Dongguo clan. I'm sorry but I've come to see your Dongguo clan's patriarch. I'll speak once he arrives. You. Dongguo Zong's face went grim as he said with a low voice, Kid, do you think you can see our Dongguo clan's patriarch just because you want to? Haven't you taken a look at yourself in the mirror? When facing the enraged Dongguo Zong, the white-clothed young man had a calm expression and directly disregarded Dongguo Zong. Send this guest out. The expression of Dongguo Zong who was disregarded sank, and he spoke with rage. Instantly, 2 Dongguo clan generals walked in from outside the hall, and they walked towards the white-clothed young man before gesturing with their hands. Please leave. Second elder, I'll just put it at this, once I leave the Dongguo clan today, it isn't so easy to make me come over again. The white-clothed young man glanced deeply at Dongguo Zong before turning around with the intention of leaving. I won't bother to send you out. Dongguo Zong grunted. He, Dongguo Zong, had lived half his lifetime, yet when had he been disregarded by a little kid like this? Not to mention the young man might not know where the person who killed their Dongguo clan's young master was. Even if the young man knew, he wasn't willing to allow the young man to continue being here for the sake of his face. Wait, right at this moment, an aged and sonorous voice sounded out from afar and approached. In next to no time, an old man strode in the audience hall. Behind the old man was an old woman that followed like a shadow. Patriarch, Dongguo Zong's expression went slightly pale when he saw the old man, and he hurriedly bowed as his forehead broke out in cold sweat. Leave. The expression of the old man, the patriarch of the Dongguo clan, Dongguo Lei, sank, and he shouted out with rage. Dongguo Zong's expression flickered between a livid and ashen expression, yet he still left obediently. As for the other two generals, when they saw Dongguo Lei's fierce gaze sweep over, they hurriedly left behind Dongguo Zong without daring to hesitate in the slightest. For a time, only the young man, Dongguo Lei, and the old woman remained in this spacious audience hall. Patriarch Dongguo. The white-clothed young man nodded to Dongguo Lei with a calm expression as if he wasn't facing the patriarch of one of the three great clans of ancient desert city, the Dongguo clan, but was facing an ordinary old man. What's your name? Dongguo Lei's eyes revealed a trace of praise. Patriarch Dongguo, you can call me Zishang. The white-clothed young man smiled lightly. You aren't from the ancient desert city? Dongguo Lei asked. No, I'm from one of the 10 great dynasties in the south, the Darken dynasty. I've come here this time to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties held by Skywolf Fort. Zishang didn't conceal his origins because he knew that even if he concealed it, with the ability of this old man before him, the old man would very quickly investigate his origins clearly. In this way, it was better to speak truthfully as it would be more beneficial to his scheme. Dongguo Lei nodded, and then his white brows raised as his face tightened slightly. You said earlier that you know where the person that killed my grandson is. You know him. These past few days were full of torment to Dongguo Lei. His Dongguo clan's members had spent a few days of time, yet were actually unable to find out who or where the person that killed his grandson was. This caused him to be both enraged and anxious, and he wished for nothing more than to go out and search himself. Today, when he heard someone had come over with information about the person that killed his grandson, he'd rushed over impatiently. Yes, Zishang nodded. So long as you can confirm the person you speak of is the person I'm looking for, then I can agree to any condition of yours that's within the ability of myself and the Dongguo clan. Dongguo Lei's muddle eyes lit up abruptly as he spoke frankly. Patriarch Dongguo, you're too kind. It will be disrespectful if I declined. Zishang started smiling as he was waiting for exactly these words. Speak. Dongguo Lei spoke again with an anxious tone. What he wanted to do the most now was to drag out the violet-clothed kid that killed his grandson, and then torture the kid extremely to the point that he would be better off being dead. Only in this way would he be able to vent the hatred in his heart. Patriarch Dongguo, before I speak of that person, I want to ask you to make a vow under the 9 heavenly tribulation. The vow is. Zishang looked at Dongguo Lei and spoke slowly. But he hadn't finished speaking when he was interrupted by the old woman that stood behind Dongguo Lei, and she said angrily, Kid, you dare coerce our patriarch. You look to me like you're tired of living. Zishang paid no attention to the old woman and instead looked at Dongguo Lei with a serious expression as he revealed a spurious smile. Dongguo Lei stopped the old woman and then looked at Zishang. Continue. I hope Patriarch Dongguo can forgive me. I'm doing this for safety's sake. Beside that, I'm willing to vow with my blood that if I don't help you find the person that killed your grandson, I'm willing to be blasted to death by the 9 heavenly tribulation. Zishang spoke resolutely. As he spoke and before Dongguo Lei could reply, he pinched open his finger, causing a drop of blood to soar into the sky, and he directly made a vow. After a short moment, 9 thunderclaps descended. At the same time that it startled the entire Dongguo clan estate, it entered into the ears of Dongguo Lei as well, causing Dongguo Lei to reveal a smile on his face. Little fellow, you're really not bad. Since you're so sincere, then go ahead and speak. What do you want me to vow under the 9 heavenly tribulation? Dongguo Lei glanced deeply at Zishang. Patriarch Dongguo, I'll be frank, I hope that Patriarch Dongguo can vow that once I help you drag out the person that killed your grandson, you must pass his spatial ring to me untouched. Moreover, you must not use any methods to take revenge on me. Zishang spoke frankly. All right. Dongguo Lei didn't care why Zishang would be interested in the spatial ring of the person that killed his grandson. What he wanted to do now was only to take revenge for his grandson. As for anything else, he didn't care. In next to no time, Dongguo Lei pinched open his finger and made a vow under the 9 heavenly tribulation according to Zishang's request. Subsequently, 9 resounding thunderclaps descended once more, and it bared witness to the vow Dongguo Lei made. You can tell me now, right? Dongguo Lei looked at Zishang. Of course. Zishang nodded hurriedly, and then he said, Patriarch Dongguo, during this past few days, I've corroborated it many times and have finally confirmed, the person that killed your grandson is an enemy of mine in the Darken Dynasty. Just like me, he's representing the Darken Dynasty to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties in the ancient desert city. His name is Duan Lingtian. Presently, he's staying in the Narcissus Pavilion in the outer fort of Skywolf Fort. Zisheng finished speaking in a single breath. After he finished speaking, Zisheng didn't wait for Dongguo Lei to reply before leaving with large strides. After he walked out of the audience hall in the Dongguo clan's estate, Zisheng revealed a brilliant smile and muttered to himself. Duan Lingtian, you're really brazen, you've just arrived at ancient desert city, yet you've offended a colossus like the Dongguo clan. But I still have to thank you for helping me to achieve my aim. Presently, Zisheng seemed to have already seen the scene of him obtaining the piece of the Devilseal tablet in Duan Lingtian's possession. So long as that piece of the Devilseal tablet fell into his hands, his future would be completely illuminated. Zisheng, needless to say, this scheme of yours is very good, but making a deal with that Dongguo clan is no different than asking a tiger for its skin. Even if that Dongguo clan's patriarch doesn't do anything to you, it doesn't mean that others would have a good opinion of you. A ghastly and hoarse voice reverberated in Zisheng's mind. Don't worry, eldest ghost, I have a grasp of the situation and know what to do. Zisheng had a confident expression. After Zisheng left, a gust of violent wind swiftly arose in the audience hall of the Dongguo clan estate, and it blew to the point the various furniture and decoration moved from their positions, and the paintings on the wall even fell down. Duan Lingtian, Skywolf Fort, along with the raging aura on Dongguo Lei's body gradually being restrained, the waves of violent winds in the audience hall gradually died down. No wonder my Dongguo clan members have been searching through more than half of the ancient desert city yet have been unable to find you, so it turns out that you're hiding in Skywolf Fort. Dongguo Lei's eyes flickered with cold lights that seemed ready to swallow up his enemies. Patriarch, the old woman behind Dongguo Lei said, if the person that killed the eldest young master is really in Skywolf Fort, then I'm afraid you can only go to Skywolf Fort and ask for him yourself. Even the outer fort of the Skywolf Fort was a place that not anyone could act wantonly at. Even if it was Dongguo Lei, the patriarch of the Dongguo clan, if he didn't obtain the permission of the people in charge of Skywolf Fort and rashly attacked another in Skywolf Fort, he would similarly be unable to escape death. The Skywolf Fort had a rule: so long as anyone from the outside dared touch a guest or disciple of Skywolf Fort within Skywolf Fort itself, then that person's fate would be death. Dongguo Lei didn't give a reply to the old woman, and he left the audience hall in the Dongguo clan estate with a pair of crimson-red eyes before heading directly towards the direction of Skywolf Fort. On the other side, Duan Lingtian, who was within the Narcissus Pavilion of Skywolf Fort, didn't realize that danger was gradually closing in on him. Presently, he stood on the empty ground outside Narcissus Pavilion and was working hard in cultivating the 9 Dragons' Radiant Flash. Of course, at the same time he was cultivating the 9 Dragons' Radiant Flash, he didn't forget to hold on to the Wind Concept Fragment and Comprehended Wind Concept. His Wind Concept was still advancing ceaselessly, and according to his estimations, it wouldn't be long before it ought to be able to smoothly break through into second-level Intermediate Wind Concept. At that time, his strength would rise greatly once more, and it was directly increased by an entire 10 ancient horned dragons worth of strength. Swoosh, swoosh. Presently, when Duan Lingtian executed the 9 Dragons' Radiant Flash, he was already capable of developing 2 divine dragons. But the body of the second divine dragon wasn't material enough, causing its eyes to have not appeared and rendering it incapable of condensing the flashes to attack. Not long after, Duan Lingtian felt slightly exhausted and stopped his cultivation. Of course, it wasn't exhaustion of the body, but of the spirit. He was able to sense that even if he continued cultivating, it would be difficult for him to achieve any breakthroughs right now, and it would instead accomplish the exact opposite. So, he stopped cultivating in a timely manner. After he stopped, Duan Lingtian left the Narcissus Pavilion and strolled around the outer fort. 777. Chapter 778, Vice Fort Master. He'd arrived at Skywolf Fort for a period of time, yet Duan Lingtian had never really strolled about in it. Even if it was the outer fort, Duan Lingtian had passed by many pavilions all along the way. All of these pavilions were used to entertain the young geniuses of the 10 great dynasties that had come from afar, and amongst them included the young geniuses that had come from the Darken dynasty like him. Whoosh! Suddenly, figure descended from the sky and attracted Duan Lingtian's attention. Zishang. Duan Lingtian's brows knit when he saw the white-colored figure before his eyes. At the same time that Duan Lingtian saw Zishang obviously had seen him as well. After a short moment, Zishang's voice transmission entered into Duan Lingtian's ears. Duan Lingtian, I truly admire you. You dare do anything and dare kill anyone. Ha 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 ha. As he finished his voice transmission, Zishang laughed loudly as he returned to the pavilion he stayed at during this period of time. He's speaking about the matter with the Dongguo clan's eldest young master. This was something that wasn't difficult for Duan Lingtian to guess. But Duan Lingtian didn't care. Since he dared kill the eldest young master of the Dongguo clan that day, he was prepared to deal with the matters that would arise after that. He's heard of the rules of the Skywolf Fort. It was precisely because of this that he wasn't worried that someone would dare seek revenge from him in the Skywolf Fort. As for what happened later, he already had a plan. So long as he became eminent in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties and even obtained the honor of number 1, he would surely be able to obtain the high regard of Skywolf Fort and even become a disciple of Skywolf Fort. Moreover, he would be a disciple that was given emphasis in fostering. After all, no power would allow a disciple with extraordinary natural talent to be covered by dust. He had extreme confidence towards this. He believed that with his worth, he would surely be able to make the Skywolf Fort protect him after the martial competition of the 10 dynasties and protect him from being persecuted by anyone and any power. Frankly speaking, he wanted to rely on the power of Skywolf Fort. Duan Lingtian hadn't walked a few steps when he heard a familiar voice. On the balcony of a nearby pavilion within his field of vision was a familiar figure. Su Li. Duan Lingtian's gaze lit up as he soared up to arrive by Su Li's side in the blink of an eye. Su Li, when did you arrive? I just arrived yesterday. Su Li smiled. Senior has come as well? Duan Lingtian asked. He'd always felt respectful in his heart towards that master of Su Li's because Su Li's master had once saved his life. Yes. Su Li nodded. Master is cultivating in silence in the room. Then I won't disturb Senior. Duan Lingtian smiled. Su Li, you're really something, so little time has passed, yet you've actually broken through 3 levels in one go to directly break through to the second level of the Void Interpretation stage. The second level of the Void Interpretation stage was precisely Su Li's current cultivation, and it was detected by Duan Lingtian's spiritual force at the first possible moment. Duan Lingtian, your eyes are venomous, as always. Su Li couldn't help but sigh as he glanced deeply at Duan Lingtian. Your current cultivation is surely not inferior to me, right? Duan Lingtian smiled but didn't answer. Su Li instead seemed to have discerned something, and he cursed with a smile. You're really a freak. I remember that during the Darkened Dynasty's martial competition that day, I was already at the 9th level of the Void Initiation stage, whereas you were only at the 8th level of the Void Initiation stage. Now, even if I've broken through to the 2nd level of the Void Interpretation stage as well, who do you think is a bigger freak amongst the two of us? Duan Lingtian rolled his eyes at Su Li, causing Su Li to be unable to help but laugh bitterly. My circumstances are different. After that day, Master gave me another 2 more spirit fruits, and one of them was a spirit fruit utilized by Void Interpretation stage martial artists. It assisted me to break through in one go from the 1st level of the Void Interpretation stage to the 2nd level of the Void Interpretation stage in a short period of time. Can I take it as you showing off? At the same time that Duan Lingtian was speechless, he deeply felt the benefits of possessing a master with a deep background. Why don't I have such good fortune? Even though the rebirth martial emperor had left behind a great treasure in his 2nd lifetime for his 3rd lifetime, and Duan Lingtian could rely on the memories of the rebirth martial emperor to retrieve it. But he didn't possess a map of the entire Cloud Continent in his possession, so he didn't know exactly which area of the Cloud Continent he was at exactly. So, even if he wanted to retrieve that great treasure, he had no way to find it. While Duan Lingtian and Su Li were catching up, there was an old man standing in mid-air in the sky nearby the outer fort of Skywolf Fort, and he waited there silently as if he was waiting for something. After a short moment, whoosh, a figure flashed out from the inner fort and arrived nearby the aged old man after a short moment, and he stood stably in the sky. This was a middle-aged man that wore the uniform of Skywolf Fort, but the badge on his chest, the pattern of a skywolf, had a pair of golden eyes. In Skywolf Fort, uniforms that carried Skywolf badges with copper eyes were ordinary disciples, those that carried silver-eyed Skywolves were core disciples and ordinary elders, whereas those that carried gold-eyed Skywolves were uniforms that only the 5 Vice Fort Master of Skywolf Fort had the qualifications to wear. In this way, the middle-aged man's identity was obvious. He was precisely one of the 5 great Vice Fort Masters of Skywolf Fort. Vice Fort Master Feng. The old man bowed slightly when he saw the middle-aged man. Perhaps his age was much greater than the middle-aged man before him, yet in terms of strength, he was far inferior. Moreover, the middle-aged man's status was sufficient to make him look up to the middle-aged man. If it wasn't for him having helped the middle-aged man in some things all those years ago, the middle-aged man might not give him face and come see him. The middle-aged man was called Feng Wei, and he was one of the 5 Vice Fort Masters of Skywolf Fort. "Is there something you need?" Feng Wei asked with slight impatience when facing the patriarch of one of the 3 great clans of ancient Desert City, the Dongguo clan. Perhaps the Dongguo clan's patriarch could command the clouds and reign in ancient Desert City, yet he was no different to an ant in the eyes of the Vice Fort Master of Skywolf Fort. So long as he wanted, not to mention the Dongguo clan's patriarch, even the entire Dongguo clan would cease to exist. If it wasn't for the Dongguo clan's patriarch having helped him many years ago, it would be impossible for him to have come out and met the Dongguo clan's patriarch today. "Vice Fort Master Feng, my grandson was killed by another a few days ago. I obtained information today and have confirmed that the person who killed my grandson is precisely a kid from one of the 10 great dynasties in the south, the Darken dynasty." When he spoke up to hear, Dongguo Lei slightly gnashed his teeth. "Get to the point." Feng Wei spoke with slight impatience. Yes. Dongguo Lei was slightly in panic when he perceived Feng Wei's impatience, and he said hurriedly, "Vice Fort Master Feng, that kid who killed my grandson is one of the 10 great young geniuses of the Darken dynasty that has come to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. Presently, he's in your respected fort's outer area's Narcissus Pavilion. Dongguo Lei implores Vice Fort Master Feng, I hope that Vice Fort Master Feng will allow me to drag him out myself and take revenge for my grandson." Dongguo Lei made clear the reason for his arrival. "You want to kill in my Skywolf Fort?" Feng Wei's face seemed to be instantly covered in a layer of frost, and his voice revealed extreme coldness that caused Dongguo Lei to feel as if he'd fallen into a pit of ice. "I only need to take him away, and I'll absolutely not allow the Skywolf Fort to be tainted with even a single drop of blood. I hope that Vice Fort Master Feng can help me achieve this out of thanks for that thing from all those years ago." Dongguo Lei took a deep breath and took out his biggest trump card. This trump card was precisely that the Vice Fort Master Feng owed him a favor from all those years ago, and he'd originally intended to leave this favor to his grandson, Dongguo Han. Yet now, his grandson had been killed, so he didn't have any more worries and directly used it for the sake of taking revenge for his grandson. Feng Wei's eyes flashed when he heard Dongguo Lei. "Are you sure you want to use that favor I owe you from all those years ago? Let me tell you, once you use this favor, there'll be no connection between you and me any longer. Even if you die or the Dongguo clan is annihilated, it's unrelated to me." Feng Wei spoke his words clearly and resolutely. Dongguo Lei took a deep breath before nodding fiercely. "I understand." "Good." Feng Wei nodded. "Follow me, and I'll pass him to you. From today onwards, both of us will take each other as strangers." After he finished speaking, Feng Wei flew out and headed directly towards the entire row of pavilions that were used to entertain the people from 10 great dynasties. The favor he owed from all those years ago had always been a worry for him. Being able to return this favor today was undoubtedly a type of release to him. In his eyes, the life of a kid from the Darken dynasty was lowly like a blade of grass, and since the kid is able to help him return the favor he owed, it was the kid's fortune that was accumulated since the kid's previous life. Dongguo Lei followed behind Feng Wei with a delighted expression and flashed out. Herbaceous Peony Pavilion was the pavilion where Su Li was staying. "I truly never imagined that you've practically traveled through all the other 9 dynasties during this year of time." Duan Lingtian couldn't help but sigh with emotion when he heard of Su Li's experiences during this almost 1 year of time, and he felt that compared to his life, Su Li's life was truly too fantastic, causing him to be unable to help but feel slightly envious. "What about you? What have you been doing in this 1 year of time?" Su Li asked with a smile. "Me? I didn't have such a leisurely time like you." Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled, but he hadn't finished speaking when his face went grim. Because a sonorous voice had sounded out from outside. "Darken Dynasty's Duan Lingtian, come out here." This voice was precisely looking for him. Who? Duan Lingtian couldn't help but frown when he heard this voice. He could be sure that he'd never heard this voice in the past, and in other words, he utterly didn't know the owner of this voice. Duan Lingtian flew out while carrying a bewildered expression. When he saw Duan Lingtian's bewildered expression, Su Li, who noticed that the matter was unusual, had hurriedly followed Duan Lingtian. Swoosh, swoosh. Duan Lingtian and Su Li flashed up into the sky and arrived in the sky above Herbaceous Peony Pavilion in a short moment, and they looked from afar at the two figures that stood in the distant sky. One was a middle-aged man that wore the uniform of Skywolf Fort, and the other was an old man that wore casual clothes. 778. Chapter 779, Crisis. Presently, it wasn't only Duan Lingtian and Su Li who'd come out, even the representatives and young geniuses of the various dynasties had come out from the surrounding pavilions. Amongst them included Feng Wudao, Feng Tianwu, and Zhang Shouyang, and it also included the Darken Dynasty's emperor, the second Prince Bai He, and the young Prince Bai Hao. As for Zishang, he stood in the sky with a black-clothed old man. The black-clothed old man was precisely his master, Bai Nanyin, the imperial uncle of the Darken Dynasty's emperor, and he was brothers of the same father but different mother with Bai Nanshang, who Duan Lingtian had killed with a talisman that day. The members of the Darken Dynasty looked at each other. They're looking for Duan Lingtian. Has Duan Lingtian committed something? Right when the members of the Darken Dynasty were deeply bewildered. Looks at the Skywolf badge on the chest of the uniform this middle-aged man is wearing, the eyes of that Skywolf are actually golden. It really is. I wonder if a golden-eyed Skywolf carries any special meaning. I still remember that the middle-aged man who led us into Skywolf Fort a few days ago had a Skywolf badge that possessed copper eyes. I heard a Skywolf Fort disciple mention it that day. In Skywolf Fort, the eyes of the Skywolf on the badge represents the status of every single member of the Skywolf Fort. The members of the other 9 dynasties shot their gazes towards Skywolf badge on the chest of the middle-aged man in the distances, and the golden-eyed Skywolf gave them an indescribable feeling of oppression. HMPH. A group of bumpkins. Right at this moment, everyone noticed that the old man, who seemed to be extremely humble when standing by the middle-aged man's side, had actually glanced at them with a gaze of disdain and insulted them as bumpkins. Instantly, the various representatives and young geniuses of the 10 dynasties looked angrily at the old man, and they wished for nothing more than to cut the old man up into pieces. Right when everyone couldn't help but want to reply with insults. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. 3 figures flashed up into and arrived in the sky in a short moment. These were 3 middle-aged men that wore green-colored uniform, and they were obviously disciples of Skywolf Fort. During the most recent period of time, they'd entertained the young geniuses and representatives of the 10 dynasties while making preparations for the martial competition. It's him. It was he who led us into Skywolf Fort that day. All the young geniuses of the 10 dynasties whispered in discussion. Duan Lingtian's brows raised as up until now, he still didn't know what had happened, because he utterly didn't know this middle-aged man and old man that had put up a big show when coming to look for him. But he had a slight impression towards one of the 3 Skywolf Fort disciples that had made an appearance now. If he wasn't wrong, when he, Feng Wudao, and Feng Tianwu had arrived at Skywolf Fort for the first time that day, they were received by this person. Vice Fort Master. The Skywolf Fort disciples with a copper eyes Skywolf badge looked at the middle-aged man with a gold eyes Skywolf badge and bowed respectfully and reverently. This scene caused the expressions of the representatives and young geniuses of the 10 dynasties, including Duan Lingtian, to be covered in shock. Vice Fort Master. The Vice Fort Master of Skywolf Fort. Everyone, this is our Skywolf Fort's Vice Fort Master Feng. Before long, one of the Skywolf Fort disciples looked around at the members of the 10 dynasties and directly introduced the middle-aged man. Vice Fort Master. Vice Fort Master, For a time, everyone from the 10 dynasties either bowed to Feng Wei or nodded. Besides Duan Lingtian, Feng Tianwu, Su Li, and some proud and arrogant young geniuses, there were also Feng Wudao, the Darken Dynasty's emperor, and a few others that nodded. All of them were well-renowned experts in their own dynasties and possessed an extraordinary status. Since they obtained their current status, they'd never bent down to anyone. So even if they were facing the Vice Fort Master of Skywolf Fort today, even though they were afraid of his strength, yet they didn't bend their backbone that contained their dignity. To them who were in high positions for a long time, dignity was more important than anything. But Feng Wei obviously didn't have the intention of fussing about it with them. Or perhaps, in Feng Wei's eyes, he utterly didn't care. This old fellow's movements are rather fast, but I never imagined that a mere Dongguo clan patriarch like him is able to get the help of a vice fort master of Skywolf Fort. Zisheng thought in his heart as the corners of his mouth curled into a slight smile, and his gaze that contained a smiling expression looked at Duan Lingtian as if he'd already seen the scene of Duan Lingtian being killed. Duan Lingtian noticed Zisheng's strange gaze, and he couldn't help but frown. What exactly is going on? Earlier, it was this Skywolf Fort's vice fort master that called me out. What's he looking for me for? Duan Lingtian's brows knit tightly as he looked at Feng Wei, and he didn't know why Feng Wei had come. Who's Duan Lingtian? Feng Wei spoke out once more. His gaze was calm, and his expression remained unchanged like water in an ancient well, as if he was speaking about something that wasn't related to himself. Why is Vice Fort Master Feng looking for Duan Lingtian? For a time, many people from Darken Dynasty turned to look at Duan Lingtian, who stood by Su Li's side. Subsequently, it was like a chain reaction as the representatives and young geniuses of the other 9 dynasties shot their gazes at Duan Lingtian. He's Duan Lingtian. In the Darchu dynasty's group, a blue-clothed young man's eyes flashed as his face went slightly grim. Isn't he just a young genius from the Darken Dynasty? He's actually able to make the Vice Fort Master of Skywolf Fort personally come look for him. What great prestige. As the blue-clothed young man muttered to himself, his eyes were filled with envy. Duan Lingtian, the thin young man that stood at the side of the blue-clothed young man, shook his head when he heard this. This matter isn't so simple. His gaze descended onto the old man behind Feng Wei as he'd noticed that the old man's eyes were filled with extreme coldness. If Duan Lingtian saw these two people, he would surely recognize them in the first possible moment, as they were exactly the people that were in conflict with him and Zhang Shouyang in a restaurant in ancient desert city. Both of them were young geniuses from the Darchu dynasty. Not good. Meanwhile, Feng Wudao noticed that something was off with the old man behind Feng Wei, as at the instant the old man's gaze locked onto Duan Lingtian, the killing intent in the old man's eyes almost shot out. Feng Wudao noticed the hostility the old man had towards Duan Lingtian, and it was hostility that wouldn't end without the death of one party. In next to no time, many people noticed this, and this included Duan Lingtian. Could it be that he'd a member of the Dongguo clan? But even if it's the patriarch who has the highest status in the clan, a mere member of the Dongguo clan is probably unable to make the Vice Fort Master of Skywolf Fort assist him, right? Duan Lingtian's face sank, and his eyes flickered as he realized he might have miscalculated. Never had he imagined that a member of a mere Dongguo clan would actually be able to make the Vice Fort Master of Skywolf Fort come look for him personally. As for the purpose, it was obvious. Perhaps, there's some sort of relationship between them. A single wrong move caused every move to be wrong. I only hope that I'll be able to smoothly escape this calamity. Duan Lingtian took a deep breath as bright lights flickered in his eyes, and his mind was filled with a myriad of thoughts and ideas. Meanwhile, numerous methods to deal with the problem flashed within his heart. The first, seek assistance from Su Li's master. But even if Su Li's master was willing to help him, but the Skywolf Fort wasn't the Darming Dynasty's Zhao clan after all. There were experts that were as numerous as the clouds in Skywolf Fort, and even if it was experts at the 7th level of the Void Transformation stage or above, there probably would be quite a few. Su Li's master might not be able to deal with a colossus like this. The second, use the last 2 talismans his father left behind to kill this Skywolf Fort Vice Fort Master and the Dongguo clan's member before fleeing Ancient Desert City. But in this way, he would perhaps be able to escape Ancient Desert City, yet might not be able to escape the Skywolf Fort's pursuit. Moreover, once he did this, it would possibly implicate Feng Wudao and Feng Tianwu, and this was something he wasn't willing to see. For a time, Duan Lingtian could only think of these 2 methods to deal with the difficult problem before him, yet both these methods seemed to not be reliable. Could it be that I, Duan Lingtian, am really going to perish here today? Unknowingly, the corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth curled into a wisp of bitterness, indescribable bitterness. He's Duan Lingtian. In the Darming Dynasty's group, a young man who wore a silver robe with gold edges looked at the young man by his side as he asked with a spurious smile. If Duan Lingtian looked over here at this moment, he would surely be able to recognize with a glance that the young man who was questions was exactly a person he'd once met in the Ice Flame Pavilion of the Darming Dynasty's capital. Zhao Weiyi, the Zhao clan's #1 expert in the younger generation and one of the 2 most outstanding young experts in the Darming Dynasty. Zhao Weiyi's face flickered between a livid and ashen expression when being questioned by his rival, and he disregarded it. Imperial brother, he's Duan Lingtian. But, it would seem that he's going to be struck with misfortune today. Lu Hao laughed. Lu Hao was precisely the third prince that Duan Lingtian had encountered in the 9th floor of Iceflame Pavilion that day, and he was also the one and only young genius from Darming Dynasty that hadn't attacked Duan Lingtian that day. Obviously, the young man that wore a silver robe with gold edges was the crown prince of the Darming Dynasty's imperial family, Lu Yong. Elder Qian, it was the master of that person by Duan Lingtian's side that killed Elder Kun. Zhao Weiyi's burning gaze stared at Su Li, who was by Duan Lingtian's side. When he recalled the scene from that day, he still felt a slight chill run down his spine even until today, as that robust middle-aged man that looked ordinary had used a single move to kill one of the two strongest experts in their Zhao clan. The expression of the gray-clothed old man that stood nearby couldn't help but go grim when he heard Zhao Weiyi. Of course, he didn't arouse the intention to take revenge, because he knew clearly in his heart that since that expert was capable of kill that old friend of his in a single move, that expert was similarly capable of killing him in a single move, as the both of them had equal strengths. In the sky, the atmosphere was extremely heavy, and the sound of danger could be heard in the wind and cries of the birds. Duan Lingtian had become the center of attention. "You're Duan Lingtian." Finally, the vice-fort master of Skywolf Fort, Feng Wei, looked at Duan Lingtian, and his eyes revealed slight surprise. 779 Chapter 780, Grade 2 Alchemist. Obviously, he was shocked by Duan Lingtian's age. A young man that looked to be around the age of 25 was capable of becoming eminent in the Darken Dynasty and obtain the qualifications to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties, and he'd even killed that good-for-nothing disciple of the Dongguo clan, so it was truly shocking. "Yes," Duan Lingtian replied when facing Feng Wei's question, as he had to admit he was Duan Lingtian now even if he didn't want to. If the numerous burning gazes that shot towards him were transformed into sword lights, they'd probably have left a myriad of holes on his body since long ago. "You, follow Patriarch Dongguo." The surprised and Feng Wei's eyes vanished quickly and recovered its calm, and his words were filled with an indisputable tone. Patriarch Dongguo. As expected, Duan Lingtian's face went grim, as it would seem like his guess was correct. That old man that wished for nothing more than to swallow him up when looking at him was really a member of the Dongguo clan, and the old man was even the patriarch of the Dongguo clan. In other words, the old man was the grandfather of the good-for-nothing disciple of the Dongguo clan he'd killed, Dongguo Han. But when faced with Feng Wei's indisputable order, Duan Lingtian seemed as if he hadn't heard it, and he instead glanced indifferently at Feng Wei. "Vice-Fort Master Feng, if I didn't remember wrongly, presently, since I'm in your Skywolf Fort, I can be considered to be a guest of Skywolf Fort, right?" Feng Wei frowned. "What do you want to say?" "I just want Vice-Fort Master Feng to know that I'm a guest of the Skywolf Fort and not a disciple of Skywolf Fort. So you don't have the power to order me around." Duan Lingtian spoke word by word, and his words were neither humble nor arrogant, and yet they were filled with a proud and unyielding nature. Duan Lingtian's words caused everyone from the 10 dynasties to be dumbstruck. Does Duan Lingtian want to die? He dares speak with the vice-fort master of Skywolf Fort like this. Those people that hated Duan Lingtian to the extreme burst into joy in their hearts, and they seemed as if they'd already seen the scene of Duan Lingtian being killed under Feng Wei's rage. Presumptuous. The 3 Skywolf Fort disciples had grim expressions, and they denounced Duan Lingtian angrily. "A kid from the countryside dares be disrespectful to our Skywolf Fort's vice-fort master. You're courting death." As they spoke, the origin energy on their bodies soared, and the phenomenon of the heavens and the earth gradually appeared in the sky above them. 100 ancient horned dragon silhouettes appeared in the sky above each of the 3 Skywolf Fort disciples. Obviously, all 3 of them were 7th-level void interpretation stage martial artists. All the members from the 10 dynasties couldn't help but gasp when they saw this scene. The status of these 3 Skywolf Fort disciples seemed to only be the lowest in Skywolf Fort, yet it was exactly existences like this that were actually 7th-level void interpretation stage martial artists. At this moment, they deeply realized the resources and reserves of Skywolf Fort, and it caused them to feel shocked from the bottom of their hearts. It was worthy of being the overlord in this border of the foreign lands that was closest to the 10 dynasties. Even if only a few elders left Skywolf Fort, they would probably be sufficient to annihilate any dynasty. If a vice-fort master personally made a move, then annihilating the 10 dynasties by himself would probably only require the slightest effort. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. 3 figures seemed as if they'd discussed it earlier and arrived to stand by Duan Lingtian's side in a short moment. Feng Wudao, Feng Tianwu, Zhang Shouyang. Even though Duan Lingtian's heart was greatly touched when he saw these 3 people, he still couldn't help but persuade Uncle Feng, Tianwu, and Big Brother Zhang, this matter isn't related to all of you should leave. He would share wealth and fortune with them, but he wouldn't share misfortune with them. Big Brother Duan, don't forget that it wasn't only you that was in conflict with that good-for-nothing disciple of the Dongguo clan that day. Feng Tianwu spoke seriously. Exactly, since we got into trouble together, then we'll bear it together. Zhang Shouyang had a candid expression and spoke fearlessly. So you 3 were his accomplices that day. Dongguo Lei's gaze flashed past Feng Wudao's group of 3, and his killing intent was frightful. Subsequently, he looked at Feng Wei who was beside him as he suppressed the rage in his heart and said humbly, Vice Fort Master Feng, if it's possible, I want to take them with me as well. Feng Wei didn't look at Dongguo Lei and said indifferently, you can only take 1 person with you, as this was our agreement earlier. As for the other 3 people, so long as they aren't in my Skywolf Fort, then whatever you do in the future is naturally unrelated to my Skywolf Fort. Feng Wei's words were extremely clear, you, Dongguo Lei, can only take Duan Lingtian with you and leave today, as that's me returning a favor to you. As for the other 3 people, so long as they're in Skywolf Fort, then you can't touch them. But once they leave Skywolf Fort, the Skywolf Fort won't interfere no matter what you do. Dongguo Lei's eyes lit up when he heard this. Thank you for your guidance, Vice Fort Master Feng. Duan Lingtian, Vice Fort Master Feng ordered you to leave with me, yet you aren't leaving. Could it be that you really want to disobey Vice Fort Master Feng's order? Dongguo Lei revealed a cold gaze as he stared at Duan Lingtian and asked in a low voice. Old goat, is something wrong with your ears? Duan Lingtian sneered. I've already said it earlier. I'm not a disciple of the Skywolf Fort and don't have to obey the order of a Skywolf Fort's Vice Fort Master like him. Of course, if a Vice Fort Master like him wants to push out a guest the Skywolf Fort invited over all the way from the Darken Dynasty, I don't have any objections. But at that time, I'm afraid people will say that for the sake of his own selfish desires, the Vice Fort Master of Skywolf Fort disregarded the reputation of Skywolf Fort and wanted to force to death a guest invited over by Skywolf Fort. Duan Lingtian emphasized the word, guest. What a way with words. Feng Wei's calm expression finally changes as a wisp of imperceptible cold light flashed within his eyes. Kid, you're courting death. When they saw Duan Lingtian still dared be presumptuous before the Vice Fort Master of Skywolf Fort, the 3 Skywolf Fort disciples were instantly greatly enraged, and they pounced at Duan Lingtian in unison. Duan Lingtian was utterly unable to fight back when facing the attack of 3 7th-level Void Interpretation stage experts. HMPH. Right at this moment, Feng Wudao made a move. With a raise of his hand, his sleeve swept out as his origin energy skyrocketed, and he directly blasted flying the 3 Skywolf Fort disciples that had struck out with all their might. Whoosh! In the sky above Feng Wudao, 600 lifelike ancient horned dragon silhouettes condensed into form and coiled down. 4th level of the Void Transformation stage. Instantly, everyone from the 10 dynasties, including the Darken Dynasty, were greatly shocked. Feng Wudao is actually a 4th level Void Transformation stage expert. The expression of Bai Nanyin, Zishang's master, went grim. The pupils of the Darken Dynasty's emperor couldn't help but constrict as he muttered. I truly never imagined that he concealed his strength so deeply. In this way, Grand Imperial Uncle that hasn't been heard from until today is extremely likely to have died at his hands. At this moment, the second Prince Bai He, the young Prince Bai Hao, Zishang, and the other young geniuses of the Darken Dynasty revealed shocked expressions. Never had they imagined that the strength of the Feng clan's eldest master, Feng Wudao, would be so strong. 4th level of the Void Transformation stage. Such a strength was sufficient to look down upon the entire Darken Dynasty. No, even if it was to look down upon all the 10 dynasties, it would probably not be a problem. This was something that could be completely seen from the disbelief that covered the faces of all the members of the other 9 dynasties. Even though I'd heard of the Darken Dynasty's Feng Wudao in the past, yet I never imagined that he would be such a terrifying expert. The experts of the various dynasties sighed. Such an expert has actually appeared in the Darken Dynasty. The young geniuses of the various dynasties were greatly shocked as well. 4th level of the Void Transformation stage. Needless to say, as a member of the 10 dynasties, your natural talent is sufficient to allow you to be arrogant. But, you attack the disciples of my Skywolf Fort in my Skywolf Fort, do you take me to be non-existent? Feng Wei looked coldly at Feng Wudao as he spoke. In the next moment, no one saw clearly what had happened before Feng Wudao was blasted flying as the origin energy on his body almost died out, causing his aura to droop, and he was on the verge of collapse. Pooh! After Feng Wudao spat out a mouthful of blood, he looked at Feng Wei with a gaze filled with fear. An expert at the 7th level of the Void Transformation stage is strong indeed. Your ability of insight isn't bad, I only gave you a small punishment earlier. If you dare commit an offense once more, I'll surely cripple your cultivation. Feng Wei spoke indifferently, and as his words showed that he entirely didn't take Feng Wudao seriously. So what if Feng Wudao was at the 4th level of the Void Transformation stage? Feng Wudao was still no different than an ant before him. Feng Tianwu's beautiful face instantly went grim, and she stared angrily at Feng Wei when she saw her father was injured heavily. But she hadn't spoken when she was stopped by Feng Wudao, who was in panic, as he was deeply afraid his daughter would vent her anger on Feng Wei. If Feng Wei struck with a killing blow, then even 10 of him wouldn't be able to protect his daughter. Uncle Feng, Duan Lingtian looked at Feng Wudao with a worried expression, and with a raise of his hand, he directly withdrew a medicinal pill and placed it in Feng Wudao's hand. Feng Wudao was stunned when he saw the medicinal pill before him. Grade 3 Life Recovery Pill, said Duan Lingtian. Feng Wudao's eyes lit up, and he hurriedly consumed the Grade 3 Life Recovery Pill. After a short moment, his injuries recovered by more than half, and his ghastly pale countenance had recovered slight rosiness. Grade 3 Life Recovery Pill. For a time, many people from the 10 dynasties looked at Duan Lingtian with surprise. Even if it was in the 10 dynasties, a Grade 3 Life Recovery Pill could be considered to be a rare thing. Duan Lingtian refused to comment when facing these surprised gazes. It was because he wasn't prepared, otherwise, he was even able to refine a Grade 2 Life Recovery Pill. Wait, Grade 2 Life Recovery Pill. Right at this moment, a flash of inspiration arose in Duan Lingtian's mind, and he thought of a way to escape this predicament. The way was to expose his identity as a Grade 2 alchemist and make the Skywolf Fort's Vice Fort Master be unwilling to lay a hand on him. Perhaps there were Grade 3 alchemists in Skywolf Fort, but it was absolutely impossible for there to be Grade 2 alchemists in Skywolf Fort. This was something that wasn't difficult for Duan Lingtian to know via the 2 lifetimes of memories of the rebirth Martial Emperor. The Skywolf Fort was only a power that was situated at the border of the foreign lands, and it was utterly nothing in the entire foreign lands. Any one of the first-rate powers in the central area of the foreign lands only had to send out a martial monarch stage expert, and they would be able to easily annihilate the Skywolf Fort. A martial monarch stage expert was a legend in the 10 dynasties, yet it was a rumor in the borders of the foreign lands, and at the central area of the foreign lands, it really existed instead. So long as it was at least a first-rate power of the foreign lands, then there would be many martial monarch stage experts present.